please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Marty?
Amy Black. Michaela Conlon-View. Here. Casey Weiss.
Present.
Jeanette Simonson. Here. Nick Felstead.
Here.
Eric Carmemen.
Here.
And Brad Dobbs.
Here, thank you. And has the meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Great. We will then move to public comment. All right, we have a number of guests here tonight, so I'm gonna move, items 8.3, 8.1, 9.4, 6.4, and 6.3 in that order to be the next items addressed.
Could you repeat that?
You want me to read them again? Yes.
Yeah.
8.3, 8.1, 9.4, 6.4, and 6.3. So I have a motion.
I'll second.
All right, in a second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. 8.3, and that is the Washington DC trip.
Mrs. Schwartz, Ms. Schwartz,
Yes.
excellent.
All right, hi everyone. I haven't met most of you. I am Renee Swordstrom. I am the 6th grade English teacher at the middle school. I was lucky enough to go on the Washington DC trip over the summer and it was so much fun. So my main purpose here today is just to tell you a little bit about it and then hopefully request to be able to do this trip again. So thank you. So we had a group of about 30 students and we went from August 4th to 7th to Washington DC. We saw all sorts of things, including the Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson monuments, as well as a bunch of war memorials, and we got to go to Gettysburg. We got basically all over the place. Smithsonian's. I mean, honestly, I wish we could have done more, but we were packed for all those days that we were there, and it was super fun. So, just some trip highlights. There's all of us in front of the White House, some of our students over at the Lincoln Memorial. Over at the 9/11 Memorial and the FDR Memorial. We had some really awesome tour guides who really helped us get to kind of access all of this stuff. They gave our students tons and tons of background information, so they were very prepared when they got to these places. We went to Gettysburg one day, which was really awesome, and we, of course, also had some really awesome parent chaperones that came with us as well. So we want to just kind of thank you up to them as well. So the request for the next DC trip, it would be a 4-day trip, August 1 through 4 in 2026. It would be the current 6th, 7th graders of 2024 to 2025. Our invite handout date would be the 29th of this October, and there would be a digital parent meeting Wednesday, November 6th. So I sent out a board proposal, so hopefully you guys are all able to look through that as well. But that's all I really got.
Anyone have questions?
Any questions?
What was
What was your favorite part?
My favorite part, honestly, I loved the FDR Memorial a ton. Honestly, more than I would have expected. That and then Gettysburg, we went to a cyclorama, which is like this huge restored painting that goes around a whole room and it shows the Battle of Gettysburg. So super cool. It's really hard to pick.
What was the approximate cost for this?
I believe that is in the packet, but I want to say it was somewhere right around $1,200 total for students, and it can be paid at a monthly rate.
I think it's over 2,000. Sorry.
2,000, okay.
What I saw was the early bird student trip
Yes.
price. It's $130 a month for 20 months, so $2,598 is what I
Yep.
saw. And is that all of the meals? All
Yes.
they fly?
All
they,
meals, flights, everything. So they should not have to really spend any money when they're there unless they want to buy some, I don't know, souvenirs.
And is there a limit on how many students can attend?
There is not. If we have a larger group of students than we had last year, we would probably have another district representative come with and have 3 instead of 2. So about 1 chaperone for every 15 students from the district. So
Do you ever have parents go along on that?
yes, we do. We had like 7 or 8 parents, and they were able to go with their students, and they could room with their students if they would like to, and all that. So
I bet the middle schoolers loved that, right?
some of them.
Good. Okay, any other questions? All right. So she is seeking approval for the trip so that they can start to advertise it to families and students can start doing some saving and some fundraising. So if the board doesn't have questions, we're requesting action on that.
I make a motion to accept.
Okay.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thanks so much for coming tonight, we appreciate it.
Great. Check my own notes here. 8.1, the student success report, our after-school program. Christine.
First night of blast, we heard, yes?
Oh my gosh, yes. I survived. It's all good. All right, so I wanted to come and talk to you guys about our after-school program at Red Creek. It's for kindergarten through 5th grade. This is our 3rd year of BLAST. It is through the grant that is up there. Our funding tier is $130,000 each year for 5 years, and like I said, we're in the 3rd year of that 5-year grant cycle. Our goals, we want kids to be successful and develop emotionally, socially, and academically. And that's what our days look like. We run from 3 to 5:30, Monday through Thursdays. We started tonight and we'll go through mid-May. And then our daily schedule, we have snack and recess, and then we have 40 minutes of academic time, and then we do 2 half-hour enrichment times, and then it's time to go home. The kids tonight were like, it's time to go home already? I'm like, yes, it's time to go home, kids. So it was good. We focus heavily on math and reading and a little bit of writing. All of our lesson plans were created the first year by certified teachers in Black River Falls so that we know it's what the kids need for their grade level work. And then the bottom is all the enrichment activities that we do. So STEM, literacy, art and music, healthy and active lifestyle, SEL, tech ed, cultural programs. So that's the stuff that the kids get to do, that fun stuff. We have lots of partnerships that we work with through our BLAST program. During 2023, Boys and Girls Club were having some issues with some management within their organization, and they reached out to us to ask if we could partner with them. So we partnered with them for that very first year for a couple of months while they could get everything figured out, and it worked really, really well. They sent adults over to help run some of the groups, so it was great. Here's the field trips and the guest speakers that we've done so far, and I think some of the ones that we're gonna do again this year. We're gonna do Zinn's pumpkin field again. The kids love that the first year. They each got to bring home a pumpkin, so it was super cute. So lots and lots of people coming in to the district to talk with the kids, and then we try to get them out into the public too. That's part of the event. The problem is we have over 100 kids, and getting 100 kids somewhere starting at like 3:30, so we're back by 5:30. So we need 2 buses. Like, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do that. So it's proven to be a little bit easier to bring people in. All right, part of the grant also is we need to have family education every month, and we need to have staff professional development every month. So those are the things that we have been doing the last couple of years, and we're going to be working on again this year. Part of the grant is having a staffing ratio. The state says we have to have at least, or lower than a 15-to-1. A 15-to-1 is acceptable ratio, and in our grant we said 10-to-1, and then we wanted a 6-to-1 with the high schoolers. So this is kind of how many teachers we've had working so far. The 24-25 looks a little low because it's so early in the year right now that it's trying to get up and running and make sure we have all the people that we want. So then the next slide, that bottom number is the ratio down there. So we've done really, really well the last 2 years and got it down to 6-to-1 like we said we would in the grant. And as of right this moment, we're at 10-to-1, but once I get more high schoolers working, then we'll get it down to 6-to-1 where it needs to be. That first year for the total students registered throughout the year, we know we're a very transient district as it is. That is also being seen in the after-school program too. We have a lot of kids who leave the district or come into the district, who come to BLAST, and then the parents find something else to do for their kids after school. So we have a lot of kids coming in and out. So last year we had 154 total kids coming in and out, and this year so far about 123. So we had 107 kids there today. We were expecting 119, so 116 I think. So it's good stuff. we're doing really well. We have to collect data for part of the grant, so this is kind of nice. This is what the teachers said about each kid and their level of engagement. So the bottom tells you how many kids showed improvement in engagement in the classroom, and the top number is the number of kids they were talking about. So there's a good fraction of kids that are making good improvement with their engagement. And we're a small part of that, of course, but still, we're gonna claim it. So that was 22-23, and this is 23-24. So again, same thing, looking really, really good. All right, so another part that we have to do for the grant is self-evaluation. So we have to look at what we're doing, and we have to evaluate and see what changes we can make. So one thing with the kids last year, we ask in a survey that they have, do you have choice in what you get to do? That's hard for 107 kids. I went and visited Whitehall, right? Whitehall? I went to Whitehall, and they have their kids each pick a sticker, and they take their sticker, and they decide which activity they want to do that day, but there's like 30 or 40 kids. I can't do that with 107 kids. It's too much, and then you don't know where they're at when parents come to get them. So I like a little bit more structure in my life than that. So what we're doing as a compromise, my idea of a compromise, is we're gonna do monthly choice stations. So every single month I'm intentionally planning, instead of those 2 enrichment blocks, it's an hour, they get to pick from different activities and go to those activities that we have set up for them. So they feel like they have a little bit more choice. We need to have at least 10 hours each week, and I figured out from our first year, I set the calendar, and we ended up with an average of 8.85 because I had some 2-day weeks in there. So then I decided the next year, last year, we can't have 2-day weeks, 3 and 4-day weeks, and it got up to 9.37. Like, I don't think we can ever actually get to 10, but we're gonna keep trying. So this year again, there's no 2-day weeks, we have 3 and 4-day weeks. Staff retention, we increased salaries by $1 for everybody last year. And then registration is one thing that we're working on right now. It has been first come, first serve, and that's what we did this year. But I was noticing some of our higher need kids who were trying to target with the grant didn't get in this year. So that's something I want to look at for next year. That's something we're talking about, Brandon and Nicole and I, like trying to figure out, do we do teacher recommendation forms of this spring to help determine which kids we personally invite a little earlier than everybody else. Like, I'm all about making it fair, but in trying to make it fair, not everybody's getting in that needs to get in. Does that make sense? So that's something that we're gonna work on. We have a wait list. It's about 50 something kids deep right now. So as kids drop out, I've already had a couple drop out, I will work on adding those kids in, more kids that we can. Next time we write the grant, we want to increase the funding. We meet our average daily attendance every single day. In fact, we could go to the next tier. I don't remember, 140,000 something. It increases a little bit.
Tops out at 145.
145. So we'll see. And then the last thing that's making me nervous is they're coming to visit on October 29th to have a talk with all of us and then watch our program, and then we have a talk with them again the next day. So right now, getting all my ducks in a row, there's a lot of documentation that I have to have ready to go, getting that going. So yeah, it'll be great.
Any board members have questions about the BLAST program?
Do you allow them to have their phones on them during
No.
the last hour?
No, they're in their backpacks. If anybody has one, that's in their backpack.
Okay.
This BLAST program is very old, from 15 years. We used to run in a gay party school. Very successful back then. 14 years ago, 13, 10, 9 years ago. But recently, when I was teaching in middle school, before this job, I only see 9, 10 students coming after school in BLAST program.
At the middle school?
At the middle school. And we serve them some candies, some cookies, and a few things. But now you are saying we have more than 100.
And this is elementary. This is kindergarten through 5th grade.
This is a great success. What did you do?
If Victoria, I just want to be clear, that's not middle school. So Nicole is going to talk in just a little bit about after-school programming for middle school and high school, but everything she just said is kindergarten through 5th grade, no
That's
middle school.
amazing.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
At least one school has reached 100 already.
Yep.
There's a
absolutely.
very high need, you know, so
Oh,
that's
yes,
why,
yes.
I think that's why we have such high numbers,
Yeah,
because
my presentation is about the elementary school. That's the beautiful news. More than 100 students after school. And teachers are real teachers.
yep, some of them are
You are
teachers.
showing us.
We have certified teachers,
Yes.
we have support staff, and we have high school workers.
Yeah, I saw that. It is going very professional. I have never seen you before. Who are you?
Oh, I'm Christy Rausch. I'm an instructional coach at Red Creek.
Oh, since when did you start this job?
As an instructional coach, this is my 4th year, I think. I've been in the district, this is my 16th year.
16th year? How come I don't know you? I've been here 16 years too. But maybe we must have missed each other. So I used to teach in high school and middle school. So not much connection with elementary. But thank you for doing this. This is amazing. I like it.
Christy, would you say that you are limited by staff availability or the overall budget that we're at that number?
Staff, definitely staff. Like right now, tonight I had to double up some kids, so like Mrs. Bluedorn had 20 kids, which for her is not a big deal, but I don't want to do that. Like, I want the teachers to also be happy at the after-school program and not have a whole big classroom full of kids. So right now it's staffing. It's hard to get certified teachers. They're tired, you know, they've worked all day long and they actually have more work to do once they get home or stay after school to do it. So yeah, definitely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else, Christy?
Thank you. Yeah.
So I was just, along with this, I thought it was important to note for those of you new to the board, we had written the grant for the BLAST program originally for K-8. And then, so we had middle schoolers going over to Red Creek because the way that grant works is that all of your students have to be in the same location. And so then it came about that there was another grant available called the Evidence-Based After School Grant, and we wrote that grant as well. And so then we were able to shift where the location of some of that like after school tutoring could take place for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And so we had that for the last 2 years. So we, as Mr. Carr pointed out, we had about 20 kids signed up, and on every given night there was around 10 kids in attendance at the middle school. And then the high school worked a little bit differently in that we ended up, attendance fluctuated a great deal, and especially when we were close to those grading periods, right? And also at the high school, we ran an art program in conjunction with the Ho-Chunk Nation. So, or not, but their grant program that they have. So, what we're doing is, now that we don't have that grant any longer, we worked with the Title I funding so we can continue the tutoring for that group of students, that around 10 students that we saw at the middle school, so that doesn't just have to stop for that population. And Kim Penzo is working really hard on high school budgeting so that we continue with some of that after school tutoring at the high school. And in both instances, we'll continue working with the tutors from the Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department, which we also are working with that group during the elementary day hours. I don't know if I have another slide or if that was the only one. And so, so this is just pretty consistent. There's around 20 to 30 students signed up, 7 to 9 attend daily for that average daily attendance. And I don't know if there's anything else. Is there anything else there, Jill? Is that the end of my information? Any other questions for me?
I'm assuming that with the amount of athletics that are available, once they get to the middle school level, like that's why the numbers kind of drop off.
Right. Well, there's a couple things at
So,
play, right?
yep.
There's athletics. They can also go home on their own, right?
Sure.
And they don't
Yep.
need that adult supervision. So I think it's a combination of two. And in middle school, like it definitely takes a lot of effort to ensure that you get the kids in there that need that after school support. Thank you. Any other questions?
Anything else from Nicole? Thank you. All right, next, Andy Orzegard has all three of these items here, so we'll start with 9.4 is the athletic uniforms.
9.4, you wanna go into it?
Yep.
Okay.
9.4, 6.4, then 6.3 is the item. And that's athletic uniforms, the hockey conference, and then the cashless entry.
Sure. So going into uniforms, I don't know what kind of questions you have for things right away if you want to, but I'd love to hand out what we've kind of gone through.
So I shared with them the email that you had sent with the chart, so
This
they
actually has some more dollar
Perfect.
amounts on it and a few more things that I was able to find out from vendors and things like that. So as far as, I'll wait till I get. Let's see what. As far as a rotation, one of the things that I talked to Jill about when I was hired was figuring out a rotation. I thought that was going to be no problem at all, hammering out a rotation and figuring out how we can get these uniforms for kids every couple of years or whatever it takes. And then I got into the job and I found out that's a lot harder than it really is because sports are different. You have cross country that runs a couple, they run up to 15 times a year. And their uniforms don't take a beating. So they can last a decade without having the wear and tear on them, like other sports like football and wrestling, some of those high contact sports. Another thing is when you look at the purchase of uniforms, the quality of them is different than they used to be. A lot of teams are now buying sublimated shirts, similar to like the shirt that he's wearing there, the Tiger shirt, and those don't last as long. They're very thin material, they're nice for kids to wear, but they wear out a lot faster. They get holes in them. Our volleyball team right now, they have long sleeve jerseys, they dive on the floor, they're only 3 years old and they've got holes all over the wrists and elbows. So those are things we're looking at, do we need to replace those more often? Do we have to look at some kind of different quality? Do we get a different kind of wear where it's shorter, longer? Things like that all come into play when you're ordering uniforms. So as you can see on there, we've started in 2015, and I don't have a whole lot of great records between 2015 and 2018, but that gives kind of a rundown of where we were at with the different things. Also want to say, we go through Chippewa Valley Sporting Goods for probably 95% of all of our ordering, just because they keep such good records of everything that they have there. So if we need a replacement, we need a larger size, a smaller size, anything in between, Randy Nicolay, who owns it, he'll get back to me in 5 minutes and say, yep, we've got the number of that jersey, we've got the size of it, we can get that to you in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the turnaround time is. So that's kind of where we're at with working with Chippewa Valley Sporting Goods and the uniforms. And just looking at kind of what we have right now, because I do talk to the coaches quite a bit about the shape of the uniforms, how they're currently lasting throughout the seasons and things like that. You talk to them about where they're at. And every single coach that's out there wants new uniforms every single year. Their kids want new uniforms every single year. And you can see they're not cheap. I try to stay on the conservative side of buying uniforms. I do say no a lot. Probably way more than other people would say no, but I really do. I want to see that those uniforms are used to their fullest before they get handed down to the JV teams, the C team level, and things like that. One thing that came up was the cheerleading uniforms. And that's been a long time since we ordered them, because I talked to the AD before me, Jay Weinman, and also Jim Ruffle. And they don't remember when, they don't remember how they were purchased. Jim thought that they were ordered through their team, through their activity accounts and things like that. So I talked to the other athletic directors in the Cooley Conference about their cheerleaders, and they said that they don't buy any uniforms for their cheerleaders because they are bought or purchased through either themselves, their team, through fundraising and things like that. So that's kind of where they're at on with the cheerleading uniforms.
So with the cheerleading uniforms,
Yeah.
I watch the girls cheer, and I feel as a district, we have to do something different because we have a dress code of how the kids should dress, correct? And when I watch our young girls, there is one uniform on a person that bears it all. If that individual did not have shorts on, and we are telling our kids, you have to hold yourself to a standard of a dress code. And yet here, the uniforms are not even appropriate for them to be cheering in. And I feel that there has to be something as a district. And when I was in school in the past, the district did pay for uniforms. And yes, it came through the letter club, and then the pep club. And I remember purchasing my own jacket. But as far as the uniform came, it was from the district.
Sure.
And I guess I'm really concerned about the attire on our young girls. I mean, we're asking them to dress accordingly during the day, but at an athletic event, it's okay if the dress is too tight, too short. And I just feel that we owe them something. If we are asking them to uphold the dress code for during the day at a school event, we need to uphold that same dress code. And I'm not the only one. There are many parents who have brought this to my attention and have been concerned about the girls' attire.
Have you heard from either of the cheerleading coaches about this?
I have not.
Okay.
I asked Kayla.
I don't doubt that you've had those conversations. I was just curious if Andy was aware of it.
So I had asked Kayla about ordering uniforms. When was the last time? She said, well, she's been here since after 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So she has no, since
Right.
she's been, she has not.
Yeah.
And so she said they don't have enough uniforms for the girls. And then you have those who had to have uniforms taken in because they didn't fit them appropriately, either too big, and yet we don't have any that fit the bigger girls appropriately.
Sure.
So I did talk to her. I did talk to a parent who agreed to be a rep, and she could not be here tonight due to a family death. And so for her, I guess she spoke with Kayla and with Ashley, and they're supposed to get some quotes for her. But I do know that this parent, and she did send the board an email, Dana Ray, who has two girls on the team.
She sent an email to the board?
She did, or else,
Yeah, it was accepted.
yeah, and it was because everything came up with the funeral on the
Oh, sure.
family death
Okay.
that took place on
So are
Sunday.
you asking us to make a decision, or are we just
I
talking
would like
about
us
this?
to consider making a decision on this, but I'm gonna bring up something else when you're finished. And it goes back to the funding with the cashless system.
Sure. We're going
So Andy, is the cheerleading team a varsity sport at the high school?
They get a varsity letter for it. Yeah. If they,
Or is it a club sport?
it's a club sport.
It's a club
considered
sport.
It's considered
So
not the
so
level
it's-
one, but it's level two.
Okay, so
But they
it's,
are able to earn a varsity level.
okay, so it's no different than like the club swim team in the winter then?
We actually have a varsity swim team that's a WIA.
I know, but I'm talking like the club after that, like they fully fund themselves, so am I correct in that or am I wrong?
I think we're trying to make it fit in a box, and I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
really clear, cheerleading has been messy about fitting in boxes. I'm gonna
So-
go back to years ago, I coached dance team, and we had X number of uniforms, and we did tryouts, and that many girls made the team, period, right? And so we had, for cheerleading, this many varsity uniforms, this many JV uniforms, we would hold tryouts, and we would fill the uniforms, and when the uniforms were full, nobody else made the team. I would say that cheerleading has, over years, eked more towards a sport in which it was 2 ADs before you, where they decided if it looks like a sport, acts like a sport, walks like a sport, then it's a sport, and we don't cut players from any other sport. Why are we cutting players from cheerleading? And then as the advisors changed, suddenly the cheerleading team grew and grew and grew and grew, And they've never been on our budget radar for uniforms because before it was a very controlled number. So I'm sharing that background simply because it's messy, and what you're saying is if they're a club, then it wouldn't come out of the athletic budget, but you say a club sport and a sport, so we're talking about it in both ways, and it's messy,
So
so.
I'm trying
And
to
I
take
know
the gray
this
out of
year-
it because I think that's when it matters. Is it a decision that we need to make as a district because it's that, or it's this? It needs to be in a box.
So I would like to just add a little bit more. So this year, they did have less on the varsity team, and they had a JV team. And then half the team on JV, the girls quit. So they moved those few left up to the varsity level. And that is, so it did increase the number, but not because they chose to, it was because of the JV girls they wouldn't have been a team. I think there was 3 of them, they moved
Two
up.
remaining.
2 remaining. And so they moved them up.
If the others hadn't quit though, they would have still needed uniforms. If the other JV wouldn't have quit, they would have needed something to wear as well.
Right, right.
Michaela?
Where do the coaches, how do the coaches feel about it? Do they prefer having their students purchase their gear, or would they prefer to have a budget for uniforms?
I think anybody would prefer to have the school
I'm
pay
just making
for
sure,
it for
there might be
fundraising
other things that I don't
purposes.
know about.
They do a great job of fundraising. That group does an amazing job of fundraising.
Okay.
Their last camp that they went to was $3,100. It was all provided by that group by doing different fundraising events and things like that.
And so if I could just add another district perspective, because I hear what you're asking for, and I'm not directing the board, I just want you to understand. So whatever money the cheerleading squad used to earn, they would use for their uniforms, pom-poms, all of that stuff. As the advisors have changed, these advisors would like to lean more towards competitive cheer, meaning that they would like to pay $3,100 to send their girls to camp in the summer. That is how they're now spending their fundraising. Because different advisors have taken over, they have a group of girls who are very interested in going on this journey with them. There's been no conversation with budgets that now the athletic budget needs a whole bunch more money because we're fielding another team. And I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm simply saying you can say, buy them new uniforms, and Andy can say, okay, right? So it's gonna have to come from somewhere is my point. And so the changes happen slowly over time as more girls came out and as those advisors wanted to go that direction. I think our student athletes, our cheerleaders, they want to go there. They don't have the funds to live the life they're currently living, I guess is the moral of the story. And so we have to figure out budget. And does the board, are you directing us to figure out the budget after the fact? Somebody goes and does something and then comes to us and says, help us pay for it, as opposed to a conversation up front that says, we'd like to be able to go do this, can you help us pay for it, right? So I just want to give a little bit of background about where we are at, and none of that changes the fact that we have mismatched uniforms on our girls right now.
Cheerleading is not at this time part of this budget.
Athletic budget, it is not.
So then I guess we should encourage the advisors to come to the people that helped create the budget early enough next year if they'd like new uniforms.
I
To
think there
get it
needs
in
to
the
be
budget.
guidance with them because they're young. And I think as far as guidance, what their role is and to help them with what needs to be done when it comes to the budget.
And I think Andy could provide that path for them.
Right.
Just have that discussion
Right.
and tell them look, ladies,
Absolutely.
if you feel like you want to get new uniforms, this is the process, this is who you need to talk to, and we can get it built into the next year's budget, because that ship sailed.
And if there's a singleton that needs taken care of, perhaps you could work with the advisors to see if that singleton could be addressed immediately.
Yeah,
Does
that's
that-
for sure. We can
Jeanette,
definitely
does
talk to
that
those.
feel reasonable for right now? Looking at the prices, a whole set of, because 20, is that a high number?
I think 22 on the team.
22, okay. So 22 uniforms, looking at the prices that you have in front of you, that's a big ask at the drop of a hat, but a singleton might be more manageable.
There's a football budget that's almost like $30,000 allocated to it, so I do think that there should be room made at some point to accommodate for the cheer as well.
There should be an ask though,
Yeah.
as opposed
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. I'm just saying, like,
Well,
equity wise, that's a huge.
and that goes
Yeah.
back to the immaturity or being told that there is no money. And that is what was said to one of the coaches, that there's no money in the budget.
Well, that's a true
That's
statement,
a true
right?
statement, there's not.
Yeah,
So-
but were they, and then what was told to them afterwards? So here we have a grant that was given for $50,000, correct?
$50,000, I don't know what
A
that is.
grant? Did you receive, or, I heard there was a grant that was received by the athletic department. And so I'm asking,
No, I don't know of any
Okay.
$50,000 grants.
So
I'd
if
love
we
to
have-
that.
all I'm asking is that we consider doing something this year for these girls because the dress is inappropriate.
What is the
And it
cost
is
of the
not-
uniforms? I don't see it on there, so
The what?
the cost is not
Yeah,
on
There's
there,
not
right?
one.
Because we don't have a record.
There's some
Correct.
people they're working on that right
Okay.
now, and
Yeah.
I mean, what's the lead time of a uniform?
It's, yeah.
There's no way they're gonna be here by the end of the football season.
I get that,
So,
Casey.
so then I would just
But-
build it into next year. Get it into the budget for a future year and allow them the time to research it and order what they're gonna have. They can kind of survey the size of the ladies that are gonna
If it was
participate.
for a guy's sport and we needed it, would we order it?
I don't know, is it in the budget?
On a sheet.
I'm just saying,
I
if it
don't
was,
think it comes down to what parts are hanging off you.
I think it
It's-
comes down to
Whether it's in the
modesty.
budget or it's not.
And that it's not a modest outfit.
That's your
It's
opinion.
not.
I think there's a lot of cheer clubs, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I used to cheer in college. Okay, words out. Sorry, do a cheerleader. But honestly, I mean, there's a lot more skin being shown in some of those events than what our high school team does. So I
We're
wouldn't say
high
that it has
school.
to do with modesty.
I'm not
but
talking about college
so-
level, I'm talking about high school with a dress code.
yeah,
And we're not
I know.
we're not upholding the dress code when it comes to these girls.
I would disagree.
I think they're two separate issues.
Yeah.
I think the dress code issue is one issue, and I think the cheer budget is another issue. And I think they need to probably be decided on separately, because there's probably going to need to be, something considered in terms of budget for their uniforms, because if we're gonna include one, we should include all different variations of sport. I think that the
If
dress
it's a
code should
sport.
be a separate issue.
If
it's a sport.
If it's a sport.
It's
that's
also probably hard to adhere to the dress code when one is flying through the air, you know what I mean? So we'd have to have that level of expectation there as well, so.
Is that something like the boosters would outlaw it maybe?
Booster Club does not buy any uniforms for anybody. It's right in their bylaws.
Okay.
Do we not have any,
But they
like,
could the booster club be petitioned to pay for the camp or that they go to?
That could
Which
be.
then the fundraising that they're
Yep,
doing
sure.
could pay for a uniform instead of going to a camp.
Definitely.
there's
So-
no money anywhere, like that we,
Right.
so that's important to know, like
Yeah.
if, so when I read Dana's email, obviously I care about the girls and their
Mm-hmm.
uniforms, and that was important to her, it's apparently important to all of the girls. They can ask TCO, the Tiger Community Organization, they do have a little bit of money, nothing exponential at this point, but that's an option. Is there a way to break it up amongst like TCO and the district in some way, shape, or form, and or the parents?
So I don't wanna lead with there is zero money, because Jeanette's email last week was the first I heard of this problem. So I have not heard from anybody else until last week when Jeanette brought it to me. I would offer that regardless of whether we find money, I don't see us getting new uniforms before football season is over. Get a group of 22 girls to agree on a style in those weeks. That will be step one. Step two would be getting them made and here on time. So I don't think purchasing uniforms for the remainder of this football season is even a feasible
So
suggestion.
back to
I
what
would
Casey
offer that when we had a dance team and they had too many girls, they started wearing black leggings and the tiger tops, or black shorts, or they went to just plain black skirts that all the girls had. So if we're in a crisis situation, there are other things that can get us through the remainder of this year and give us time for them to thoughtfully select quality uniforms that everyone feels better about, and for us to find some money to be able to pay for said uniforms so that they are ready for their competition season next spring.
So that goes back to what Casey said. We obviously can't do anything probably mid-September, almost October, without it being in the budget. So
Yeah, but
And I do know, and the only reason why I brought it up late is because I went to the football game and started looking and watching because.
So I've watched them too, and I'm just not, I don't have the same lens, and that's okay,
Yeah.
I didn't
Mine's
notice
good.
what you did, but that's okay.
But
Yep.
I'm looking and then I just looked and it bothered me.
Sure, and
because-
clearly not just you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so I'm just the one that's bold enough, I guess, to bring it to people's attention. So I'm not, and I understand we wouldn't have uniforms for this year. I also understand that the girls do wear black leggings when it is cold.
So we
So
need Mother
that
Nature to
is-
help us out and drop the temperature a little bit so that
Yeah.
they're not so overheated.
So, yeah, so I do understand that. I wanted us to be considering more for next year as a district, as a board, because yes, I understand, we will not get them by this year.
Andrew, would you mind sharing with the board some of the different ways that you have been able to do uniform replacement? Because your budget won't replace a full team. And I know you mentioned football. We usually are outfitting 60 humans, and I just hit, like, a helmet is up to like multiple hundreds of dollars. So
And I
I,
recognize that the safety on that is different than the safety for cheerleading.
yeah,
It's
except the
just-
catching, that's really important, but that doesn't cost us anything, right? So you wanna just talk about some of the ways that uniforms have been purchased in the past, like end of year money and
It is. So I will talk with like Jill a lot of times, and I'll say this is what we're looking at. These are the teams that are in need right now, and say, Jill, how are we looking? And she said, well, let's see what we have at the end of the year, and we could possibly do that. And that's where it comes down to most of the time, is if we have funds at the end of the year, and we've been over budget, like we have been.
Andy has taken a much more involved stance in the selection of uniforms than some of our previous ADs. The problem we ran into with football recently was that another coach selected a very thin fabric that just tore as soon as they just did not hold up at all. And so now Andy has definitely inserted himself more soundly into the purchasing
Much
of
higher
uniforms.
quality.
Pardon me?
They're much higher
Yeah.
quality.
We're spending a lot, but hopefully we'll do it once in a blue moon as opposed to
Correct.
switching uniforms every couple of years.
And depending on what the sport is, the contact level and things like that, we can still get away with a lot lighter with some of those non-contact sports and things like that.
I just thought of this and I just want full disclosure. So last year we did have that EBAS grant as a district that the board approved, and it was for after-school events. And we did help supplement a portion of the football jerseys, not to the tune of $50,000, and it wasn't an athletic department grant. It was part of district funds that when Andy brought that need to us, we had that conversation. So if you're hearing grant, perhaps that's, I just wanted to connect those dots as I was thinking about it, so.
And obviously, the fiscally responsible thing is if we could purchase some more uniforms that match some of the existing ones, then we don't have to buy, what was the number, 22? You know, if we could get like
Correct.
12.
And if they're available,
Right.
that's another piece.
Right. Absolutely.
Because they do change. Vendors don't make some after a while. I mean,
Right.
we don't have an option to get replacement jerseys for 2 or 3. Then we also need to look at, like, after a certain number of years, do we continue to get replacements if there's 4 or 5 or 10, or do we go with a whole new set? So, like for instance, our hockey team, we have very, very high quality uniforms for our hockey team, and we actually purchased in bulk, like the main tiger piece that goes on the front and the back of the jersey, so that we get a much cheaper price when we order replacement jerseys for those teams too. Just trying to stay. They're very nice. They're very high quality. The teams take extremely good care of them. They're proud of them. They put them in a carrying case every single night to and from. And I just thought that was a good thing to continue with those uniforms and then buy those places that will help us save some money.
It's been a while and I don't remember, but is there any sort of absorption on the parents' behalf regarding uniforms? Like, let's say a uniform rental fee per year. Is that something that's already in place or not at all?
I'm sorry, did you say the uniform rent?
Well, I mean,
parent, like a deposit or
it
payment.
would just, well,
Sure,
they
yep.
wouldn't get it back, obviously, but just like, you know, a way for the parents to contribute so that there was more money in the budget.
We
There
don't
have
do
been
that,
it.
but we do like warm-ups, they would often buy, you know, like the cheerleading
I got that
jackets,
part.
they would, yeah,
Yeah,
but not.
I just didn't know, like, let's say if every year you play golf, you pay, you know, like a $25 fee
Right.
per year. I don't know.
There were parents that said that they would even consider doing that, you know. They see it, they see the need, but
Becomes a bit of an equity concern that we wouldn't want a student not able to participate because their family couldn't afford it, but we certainly have a
Well, there's
process for a waiver.
safeguards to put
Yep,
in place
yep.
for that as well, because then you'd still be taking in some money. The uniform wouldn't then belong to the student, it's just, you know, obviously can be explained to the parents in the vein of like, if you're gonna golf this year, you have to pay a $25 uniform fee, and that's for your usage of the uniform. I mean, it's just brainstorming, obviously not the best idea I've ever had, but I've never minded as a parent contributing to my children's sports, and obviously there are people that cannot do that. But again, there are measures we can take to cover those situations where you're still pulling money in from people that might be something to consider for every sport.
So currently only we charge, it's $25 for every high school athlete for the whole season, but that's to cover their impact testing. Other than that, we're a free district.
That's quite the steal, because a lot of other districts are charging, you know, fees, you know, to play sports or to participate or to use a uniform or to go towards uniform. Not a bad idea to consider.
Anything else on uniforms for Andy? Otherwise, he's got one more topic.
2 more.
Oh, sorry.
Next is 6.4, the hockey conference pre-show.
Has anyone else blown away by the size of the other schools contributing to make a team versus Sparta, Toma, Black, like if Spash, which is the largest high school in the state, has to co-op with somebody else to form a hockey team, that is
Wisconsin Rapids, Marshfield, several others around the area too.
crazy
It's
to
pretty
me.
crazy.
Crazy.
I'm just going to give you some of the notes that I have for this hockey
To make one
co-op.
hockey team. So it's, yeah, so there's one hockey team that has all the Spash high school players, Wisconsin Rapids players, Marshfield players, and there was one more, thank you. All to make one high school team, and us and Toma and Sparta have a team. Like, that's crazy to me.
Thank you.
They're drawing from thousands of students.
And that's one of the big pieces with this conference is there's only 27 teams in the whole state of Wisconsin for girls hockey right now. And I've been looking and trying to find some kind of conference because right now our girls team has been part of what's called an independent conference. We don't get to compete for a conference championship. We don't have a real good solidified way of getting kids all conference awards. We've had several kids that get all state awards that get bypassed for conference awards. We're part of what's called the independent conference. They still can get them, but it's not a very solid way of getting those awards for our girls because we've got a lot of girls that are very, very talented, and I think this getting into a conference is going to be really, really good for our girls and our teams. Just to go through some of the notes that we talked about, does this limit who we normally play? It does not. Each one of these teams in our conference right now, we play at least once a year. This would give us two games against each one of those teams. So we would play Northern Pines, Medford, Spash, and DC Everest 2 times a year, once at home and once on the road. With those 8 total games, we would be able to have a conference meeting at the end of the year and have a real solid vote on who would receive those all conference awards and a team championship too for conference. Again, there's only 27 total teams in the state. We have 16 games after those original 8 with the conference that are set for flexibility with other teams around the state. One of the things that people asked about was, our driving distance, the times it takes us to get to these places. Right now we go to Ozaki, it's a little over 3.5 hours, and they did it in decimal points, which isn't real friendly, but that's how it is. Eagle River, Superior, De Pere, Xavier, Stoughton, Northland Pines, Brookfield, and many others, and they're over 2 hours, 3 hours. If you look on the next page, the teams in our conference, Stevens Point is 1.5 hours, DC Everest 1.75, Northern Pines 3.25, and then Medford is 1.55. So they are not teams that are far distance from what we are normally playing anyway. We still have those teams that are very close to us too: West Salem, Baroque, Bear, Eau Claire, Baldwin, Chippewa Falls. The biggest piece that I do not like about joining this conference is that we would not be in a conference where we are competing against teams that are sectional. So we would be playing teams in kind of the other sectional that's closest to us twice a year, where we would have the other teams in our sectional only one time a year. That can be bad, that can be good. It depends on how you want to take that. Because if you play somebody too many times, you learn each other a little bit. And if we're kind of taking those first two games and they meet us in sectionals and they take us out because they've kind of learned our game a little bit better, that can be not so good. Or it can work the other way for us too. So we aren't seeing those teams in our sectional as much as we would if we were to join a conference with those teams. But that's not an option for us right now. This is our option that's presented to us. What questions do you have for me on the conference? Oh, I also wanted to just let you know that meeting with our school board, Granton is also talking with their school board. Melrose Mindoro supports, Neilsville supports, Sparta supports, Toma supports, and Whitehall I didn't receive an answer.
How many skaters do we have from Whitehall?
0. We haven't had any for a long time, and I think Jamie, anytime he gets those emails, just kind of like, oh, it's hockey, we're not dealing with that right now. So I include them in everything, they just don't have anybody that's available right now.
So as school boards are the ones that have to approve WIAA co-op agreements, I asked Andy to please check with the other schools that before we decide to join this conference, I asked him to check with the other schools that we co-op with, and so that's what he just shared with you. Those school boards are supportive of us joining that conference. But again, because we are the host school, it is up to this board to officially make that decision. So action is needed.
So there's this new conference. What is West Salem, Baroque, Bear, Eau Claire? What do they do for their?
So I actually sent messages to Baroque and West Salem, and they weren't in a position to. They're further away than we are from those schools that are in this conference.
Do they have a conference?
They don't have a conference.
Okay. So they're part of our Cooley conference.
They're part of our Cooley conference, but we don't really have a conference. This is a chance for us to join a real conference.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah. Yep. Good question.
They run independent? Is that what you're saying?
They do run independent. Yep.
I guess I'll make a motion for the board to vote on joining.
I'll second.
So, a motion in favor of, just to be clear.
In favor, yeah, sorry, in favor.
So, motion second. Further discussion on this?
That's your hope though, to join this other.
It is. This hasn't been approved by the WIA yet.
Okay.
It has to go through what's called a fast track process. If all schools are in favor of this, then it can be fast tracked and it can be implemented next year.
Okay.
Where if it's not fast tracked, then we would have to wait 2 years before we can get this going. And we're trying to get it to go through as quick as possible.
And these girls will be able to use that then when they're doing college stuff, because they'd be in the conference.
Those college awards,
Yep.
The all-conference awards and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
No
Yep.
bad. Okay. Yep.
I'm not saying that they're going to get a whole lot more attention because they're part of this conference, but it could.
Can't hurt.
You can list that on your resume that you were all conference, first team all conference in this conference.
All right. So we have a motion second. Any further questions or any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. One more, Andy. The cashless entry.
You bet. So the whole cashless entry started last year at the very beginning of the year. I met with the Cooley Conference ADs, and we talked about how the WIAA uses GoFan for everything that they do. I want to give you a couple examples of how GoFan is used, how they report their the funds that we get from them. Jill may have seen this before.
Thank you.
So when we started this conversation, none of us were really on board. We didn't know for sure how to go with this option with GoFan. And then we went to a few events and we just kind of started seeing how easy it was and how it was expanding to all WIA events. Any state competition now is all cashless. It's all GoFan. And we all agreed that we would be supporting GoFam in the 2023-2024 school year. And it was up to the school how they chose to implement it. Some schools decided they were going to go cashless right away. Some schools said, absolutely not, we're not going to do this. We're going to offer a cash and a card way of doing things. One of those schools was Westby. Westby said, we're not going to do this. People in our community are going to hate it. They're going to refuse to want to use it. It was 2 weeks later, Westby went completely cashless. They went digital only. And the people that were down there raved about how much they loved it. It was a very good thing for their community. They really liked it. And then it was also GET, West Salem. Yeah. So those four are currently in cashless. Arcadia still offers a cash and a hybrid, and Luther and Baroqua. So when we went cashless, I was under the understanding that the Cooley Conference was going all cashless this year. Every one of those schools was going that way. And it came to this year with our first meeting, and it wasn't. Some of them were still going with cash and digital options. And I was honestly a little disappointed because we all agreed last year that we were all going to continue going with this direction. With that said, we have now changed things slightly to offer a little bit more because the MVC, like Sparta, Toma, those schools like that, they're 100% all cashless. They've gone digital. So we do offer a cash option where you can buy your ticket ahead of the time at the high school or at the district office, and you can get yourself a paper ticket, or if you prefer, you can buy a season ticket. You can buy a season ticket digitally. It's $50 for the whole year. You can go to every single game and you get that digitally on your phone, or we have the option where you can buy that with cash at the high school or at the district office and you receive a paper ticket that you will have laminated and go for the rest of the year. So essentially, you can go to 9 contests and you will have, that's the money you would have spent if you went to every single event. $6 per ticket.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What is our ticket policy, as I'm not currently aware or may have forgotten, for senior citizens? Do they get into all of the games free? And if so, could you share with us at which age that occurs?
Thank you for asking that
Of
question
course.
because it totally slipped my mind. So anybody 62 or over is free to get into all of our events.
Okay.
That's across the board with the Cooley Conference.
That is
So-
amazing. So they don't even have to worry about bringing their cash.
Correct.
That is wonderful. Thank you.
They don't have to have a card. They don't have to have anything.
Either, right?
If they
That
tell us
is
they're 62,
wonderful.
they're
Okay, good deal.
So when do you allow the cash to be used to purchase tickets with cash?
anytime during business hours at the school, at the high school or the district office.
And for those individuals at work?
If they can find those spots during the business time, they can purchase the whole year if they want at one time when they come in.
And how much does it cost for us to be part of the GoFam?
Nothing, that's totally free. So originally when we talked about this last year, so the costs for tickets were at $5 and $1 for anybody to buy a ticket. Adults were $5 and students were $1. Our students are free, so it doesn't cost them anything. When we decided to go with GoFan, we changed it to $6 and $2 because GoFan takes $1 from each one of those.
Right.
So it ends up being the same intake, revenue for us.
But if you kept the ticket at $6 and they paid cash, you're not paying anything to GoFan.
Correct.
And according to WIAA, they say that it is up to each district as to what we do if we use GoFan and still offer cash.
So we actually contacted the WIA because we thought that they had maybe heard a lot of these issues. This is the first they'd heard from anybody. And then they said that it's kind of on you guys to check things out because it's we've never heard anybody complain about this.
And so with it being our federal tender, our currency, to on the federal side, it says if you accept federal dollars, you have to offer
But the location isn't dictated, so you can like drive your tender right on over to the school board, or you could drive your tender right on over to the high school, correct?
Doesn't
Right?
matter where, yeah.
Yeah, so it's still accepted, right? We're not
Still
not
accepted for the same
accepting it.
day.
So
Yeah.
by selling the tickets at the high school office, we're fine.
Because not accepting cash would be illegal, and that'd be just
And I just wanna be
bananas.
clear, it's not illegal. I just wanna be clear that we've got.
No, I said not accepting cash would be bananas, right? But we still do, so we're good.
And I'm offering that, I've engaged with several attorneys in casual conversation, one officially, and they said that the citation that has been used to talk about legal tender simply establishes that it is legal tender. It does not establish that every organization in Wisconsin must accept it. There was actually a bill introduced in Wisconsin that all organizations must accept cash, and it was voted down and did not pass. So I just want to be clear, we are offering a cash option. It is not illegal, according to school attorneys, to not accept cash. So I just wanted to be factual about it.
So what you're saying is it's accepted as legal tender, but not the only.
Right, it's accepted as legal tender, but not everyone it is established as legal tender,
But it is
but
not
we
the
don't
only.
have to take that legal tender at someone else's discretion.
So it's the same thing, the IRS must accept, by federal law, the IRS must accept cash, but they don't have to accept it 24 hours in every location. So they have locations
so
that will take cash
location.
and locations that won't.
So what are the disadvantages of accepting cash? Yeah, there's
You gotta have some.
So, if you see
Let's
the
ask Jill
reports
about
here-
cash handling
Yeah.
procedures and our auditors.
Well, Andy knows what they do with the cash every night, so what do you have to do after the game at 10 o'clock at night or 9?
That's when we take it to the office and tone it and have it set so we can take it in the next day. So it's sometimes 11 o'clock before we leave.
Is it hard to come up with volunteers to like take the cash and all of
Yes, it
that
is.
as well? Because I think we kind of have a deficit of volunteers sometimes, so I imagine that is maybe also part of the decision.
It's so efficient to get people through those lines. If you have it on your phone, you click a button and then they're through. If you have that pass with you that you bought during the day or the day before, if you have your season pass, it's right in your hand. We have it numbered. We know who has that one. Anybody that buys it with cash during the day, we have that in triplicate. We keep one copy at the high school. One copy goes to the ticket sales people, and then one person, the person who bought it, keeps it with them too. So just keeping the cash, it's
The app speeds up the line, I'm guessing.
There's less volunteers
So-
needed.
So what kind of decision are we looking to make? I mean, it's pretty obvious like what this is. As a board, do we feel we're doing anything incorrect? And if not, thanks for sharing.
I've been receiving so many emails from my constituents. They are
The kids? The kids?
not kids, they're parents.
Oh,
But they're under the age of
Oh.
62, of course, right?
Yeah, they're
Oh,
not
okay,
the-
perfect.
So they are sending me these laws.
Can I just say something?
yeah.
The sarcasm that comes across, we talk about wanting to get together and to be respectful of each other, and I'm not seeing that. And
Okay.
the look,
Then maybe
the
it's
comments,
like,
it's inappropriate. It really is.
okay.
And as a board, you're asking us to be respectful. I've heard that many times, that we need to be more respectful of everybody. And I'm asking that you do the same when it comes to Iftikhar, when it comes to anybody else on this board. Nobody makes disgusted comments. And I think as a board, if this is what you want is unity, then the comments have to stop when somebody else wants to talk. And it is a lot directed when Iftikhar is talking, and it's inappropriate. And I don't care who sits and smiles, smirks, or anything,
That's fine. That's your
but
opinion.
it's inappropriate. You call yourself to be an adult, well then we should all act like adults.
And let's be efficient.
That's right, be efficient, but we need to be respectful as well.
Could I share just a couple more things about GoFan? Since I'm on stage, I really want to share a couple of things that I really enjoy about this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is a way we can keep track of attendance too. So it gives us a readout right here. 278 people purchased tickets for the first one. If you go back to, I'm going to skip the first couple of pages. We get a weekly report on page 4 that shows everything that's happened during that week. So that actually we used for a fundraiser. So we were able to use GoFan for the fundraiser also. Not just an athletic event, but we were able to use it for a fundraiser. So if you look on the next page, this covers the, we actually went with the Booster Club and supported them with GoFan also. And they were able to sell tickets, sell different things at their event by using GoFan too. So, it's not just for athletics. We use it for homecoming dance. We use it for prom, things like that too. So I forgot about that earlier. I'm sorry. I left that out.
Okay.
Those are some pieces that I just wanted to make sure that you saw.
If
Concessions too. Concessions still remains cash or card option, just because we know so many kids and things like that that have cash at those games that just need that option. But we do have the option to use GoFan also, and it gives us an inventory of who bought what. If you look on the very last page, it tells you who bought coffee, who bought chips, who bought all of those things in those nights, and it gives us a breakdown on what was charged, and we can kind of break those down and kind of keep track of what the high sellers are and things like that. So it doesn't solve everything, but it's included on those reports, which is kind of nice.
Sir, what is your name?
Andy Ossigar.
Andy, would you please read these 2 small paragraphs for everyone? My constituent has reached out to the federal government.
Sure.
So let's abide by the rule of law.
Well, that's actually, it's been kind of...
I crossed the name of the parent, so you could read those lines.
Thank you for your recent correspondence in which you asked whether the public organization have to U.S. currency when charging admission to a public event. Section 31 U.S.C. 5103 entitled Legal Tender states United States coin and currency, including Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of Federal Reserve, banks and national banks are legal tender for all debts, public charges, taxes, and dues. And that's what we do. We still accept cash for our events at the high school and at the district office for those events.
So we didn't ask the board for approval to go with GoFan. My opinion is if you want us to not do that, the board should take action. Otherwise, the board not taking action implies we continue moving forward with the way we've been doing business. Does that seem reasonable?
I would say take both. Let's abide by the federal laws. These are the dangerous things. Today, we all receive email. We board are bound to abide by the state and federal laws. We are not so I would say accept both cash and GoFund or whatsoever it is.
We do.
Which we currently are.
Which we currently are.
Yeah.
It looks to me like there's a lot of people that, I'm assuming box office, that's like cash at the school.
That's, the box office is when you make your purchase at the gate with your card.
Okay, then GoFan is
That's when they purchase it ahead of time with their own device or whatever they do.
like a
Different.
season pass or...
No, that's more just that they've gone and they've taken a picture of the little
Okay.
QR code before they come in, or they get the link that we send out every week, and then they purchase their tickets through that.
I'm seeing no motions. So that will complete 6.3. Now moving back in the previous order of things, we're on to 6.1, gifts and grants.
Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
There are no gifts and grants this evening.
On the report. Our annual meeting agenda is October 28th of this year. We have to approve this every year, and Shelley would tell us I forget, it has to be class 1 notice twice, and I don't remember the details of that.
Yep, Randy will take care of it, but it will be in the newspaper for multiple weeks prior to.
For the annual meeting agenda.
Correct.
Yes. 2 weeks we posted in the newspaper.
So we do need to approve that. Is there any questions on the annual meeting agenda?
This is taken right off of a WASB template, just so everyone is clear.
I will move to approve the annual agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, on to 6.5, childcare center.
So the last time we discussed this, you had asked for impact and a budget. So we're gonna start just by showing you, because when we talk about childcare, I believe that you've all heard through the community of need for childcare seats. And what our task is now is to show you the role that the district could play in addressing that need and what that would mean for our taxpayers. So what you're looking at right now is the tax rate history. So I just want to walk you through that a little bit. In 1819, it was $8.98 was our mill rate, and you can see that it stayed at $8.98 for a total of 3 years, then it dropped, and then stayed at $6.30. I just want to remind everybody of two things. One, if you recall, in 2020, we passed a $23 million successful referendum, and yet our mill rate still dropped the year following that. So that's number one. And two, the reason we were able to do that was because of the defeasance strategy that the Board of Education, all members that have been elected since 14 with our first referendum, have opted to use that strategy. So I don't know if you want to explain it, or yeah.
Sure. Defeasance is levying additional amounts to pay off debt quicker. So when we levy those additional amounts, we can either choose to pay off debt if interest rates are such that it's an advantage to do that, or we can hold on to those dollars and structure that so that we can levy differently in the future, and fit into that. So that's what we did during the referendum. We were able to have basically zero cost in the last referendum because we had changed how we're structuring our debt, and it worked well for us. So.
It has worked out well. We were able to talk about during that referendum in 2020 that we already had eliminated over $2 million in interest payments for our community because of that paying off debt earlier. So I want to talk a little bit about that because so many of you are new-ish to the board, and I just want to make sure we're all talking the same language. So that mill rate is based off of our revenue limit and our property assessed values, all of that stuff. And that will tell us what it could be if it dropped to the lowest level possible, is a calculation Jill could do. The board has taken the strategy since that first debt that we received to use that defeasance. So that means the bottom of where we could let that mill rate go and where our mill rate currently is, there's a gap in there. And those funds are what we've been using to pay off the debt earlier, okay? So that gap exists even as the mill rate has dropped down to 630. There is still defeasance funds in that amount. If we didn't have any debt, we would not have that strategy at our disposal because it has to be, you can't just decide you're going to levy your community more. We have that approved referendum where our community said, yes, go out and borrow that money. That gave us the permission to use that strategy throughout, right? Okay.
Yeah, so even though the mill rate dropped in 21, 22, 22, 23, we were probably targeting about the same total levy. And the levy even dropped probably a little bit during those years. But the levy could have dropped even more. But we chose instead to target that total levy amount, let it drop a little bit. The mill rate still's dropping.
And that's what previous boards have agreed. We want to continue to move down slowly, but let's also keep that strategy in play as long as we can, that defeasance piece. So just wanted to explain that to you. So that 630 is our estimate, and that won't be locked in until after third Friday count is done, and equalized aid is done, and we get our final aid payment from the state. That's when that 630 will be finalized for the 24-25. Last year it was 630. We are estimating it will be close to that 630 again, but that's why I noticed she has estimated on top of there. When we get to our annual meeting date, that's when the board will see the real numbers for 24-25. Okay, so 630. Now if you would go you wanna talk through this a little bit, Joe?
Sure. So there's a lot of detail here, but I wanted to make sure you had kind of the background from where we were getting numbers from. I borrowed some staffing strategies from another school district that has childcare in their school district. So looking at how many staff they have, because I've never ran a daycare before or childcare before, so needed a little bit of help with structure. So looking at what the estimated cost of tuition is for those different ages, thinking we'd be nearly full capacity, but not at capacity. Again, this is an estimate, this is a budget to give you some sort of look at, here's the revenue we get, here's the expenditures we have. So on the top, that is looking at the weekly revenue, tuition from parents. Also looking at the before after school care. We haven't fully figured out 4-year-olds, and it kind of depends what others are doing with 4-year-olds. So we've budgeted as if they were here all week, but that's may not necessarily be true. I guess if we don't have that much revenue for 4-year-olds, our deficit's a little bit greater, right? So but just trying to put some sort of cost, some sort of numbers to it. So that's the weekly revenue, and then we looked at the estimated staffing costs, and this took a lot of conversation. We looked at what other child care centers were paying their staff. This might be even a little bit more than some of those child care centers, but it's in the ballpark. Something, again, to base the budget off of for expenditures. And then we looked at what would that mean for annually. So putting it into the annual amount for tuition, the revenue from parents, amongst other things, is about $610,000. But expenditures totally would be about $748,000. So right there is the deficit of about $138,000. We are looking at some people would take family or single health insurance because if they work the 40 hours a week, because we are a large enough employer, we have to offer them health insurance. Some would take it, some may not. Some may choose Badger Care. Some may be on their parents' health insurance yet. They might be under 26. We have a lot of new teachers that don't take health insurance. And then we would have some staff that are currently part-time staff that would qualify for full-time benefits that may go from single to family benefits. So that's part of that wraparound before and after care, where that would affect that. We included some professional development, supplies, utilities, a little bit of maintenance, telephone, and some miscellaneous fees for some sort of system for tracking the tuition payments for the families. Then the next sheet, we wanted to put that into what does that mean for Fund 80 then? So that gap of $138,000. Well, we'd also have some one-time costs that we'd have to come up with for the first year. We'd have to put some playground equipment in and redo that play surface at Gephardt. We would need some furniture for the classrooms. We would have to remodel our current restroom, not that we'd do necessarily everything. We would need some shorter toilets, for example, and shorter sinks, and we need to move some things around in there. We would want to do an additional secure door in the hallways so that we could separate ourselves from the back area of Gephardt, the wing that the food pantry is usually using currently. We'd also have to extend our fence from the building to the current fence that's in the back of the playground as well. So those one-time costs adding up to that $138,000 deficit for an annual amount for operations costs would be about $333,000. And then I looked at what that would mean for the next, the following years. Didn't do much of a change for the second year. The third year, again, these are estimates. I don't even know what the state budget looks like, 1 year from now, let alone 2 years from now. So again, just looking at small rate increases, perhaps for tuition, and some wage increases for staff. So the illustration, I wanted to show what the 23-24 actual levy was. And you can see those amounts there from Fund 10, Fund 39 is our referendum debt. That's what we have to levy based on our schedule for our debt repayment. Then we also chose to do the defeasance of that additional $300,000. And we had been levying $20,000 in our community service Fund 80 fund. So that's our total levy. That was our total value for our property and our school district. Our tax rate was $6.30. So I wanted to try to do apples to apples. So for 24-25, targeting that $6.30 tax rate, we know our equalized value probably will go up a bit. So our defeasance was going to go up a bit also for 24-25. But then I wanted to look at, okay, so if we compare with 24-25 with the childcare costs included in it, we would drop the defeasance a little bit back to what it was for 23-24. So again, trying to get to apples instead of having that increase in the defeasance. So put it back to $300,000 defeasance. And then add on in Fund 80 that community service fund of $333,000 to the $20,000. So that would come up with an increased levy and a $6.47 tax rate versus the $6.30 tax rate we had the year prior, or even compared to our estimate. So that, if I keep going down, that's an increase of 17 cents per thousand. Or for $100,000 property, house valued at $100,000, that's $16.56. So if you continue that, I didn't want to go out 2 and 3 years, but I just wanted to compare what year 2 costs were if we didn't have those one-time costs. So that would drop that Fund 80 levy back down to $158,000. So comparison to $6.30 would be $6.32. So that's only 2 cents more per thousand, or $1.81 per $100,000 house. So if you have a $200,000 house, then that's $3.62. And looking at heat costs in year 3, again, if we're able to charge a little bit more to offset our wages for our staff and have a little bit of a down tick in that expense in Fund 80, it might be 1 cent per thousand, or 93 cents per $100,000 house, or $1.80 for a $200,000 house value. Does that make sense? I was trying to compare what we have and what we're estimating, and then filter in the Fund 80 expenditures.
Thank you for doing that, Joe.
Do you have questions on that? Because I know it's confusing.
Especially for those that haven't played with that mill rate before, right? If it's a foreign language, it's hard to grab all that. Basically, what we tried laying out past the first year of those one-time expenses is you close that gap by increasing the cost, the fees for families, and the gap between your rate increases and staff increases has to shrink after time. I would say that when I talk to lots of other school districts, there are very few that say it is a zero net game, that they don't break even in the short run, perhaps the long term, but they have also factored in some staff retention that happens based off of the insurance and the turnover. So for example, our aides right now work 32.25 hours, I think, something like, it's 6.75 per day.
Yeah.
And so if they all jump up to 40 hours a week, then they become eligible for family health insurance. That increases their ability to stay in those jobs. Not to mention, right now our aides work school year, and so they don't have a earning possibility during the summer. And not all want it by any stretch, but some definitely do, and so would have full-time employment during the summer through the childcare. The other is that districts have had open enroll in or a reduction in open enroll out because they are now providing similar services to their neighbors in that surround care for families. And so that won't show up on the Fund 80, but would show up in your Fund 10 by increased enrollment. And so they have found ways to track that so that those costs are being carried through to the child care center, not the Fund 10.
I have a question, Shelley and Jill. So Fund 80, if as far as cost for teachers, where would that come from? If we're gonna take aides that could up their hourly per week to work 40 hours versus 32, out of what fund would we pay their expenses?
80. And from the revenue that we receive from families paying for their childcare.
And that is appropriate out of the Fund 80 to pay?
If you look at Fund 80 on the DPI website, it's called School Board Operated Daycare Child Care Centers, and it is most definitely an improved expenditure of Fund 80.
And this, I should point out too, this is one model. I mean, it wouldn't have to look exactly like this. We wouldn't have to target $6.47. I kept a defeasance in there of $300,000 just to try to be as apples to apples, like I said, to compare to a prior year. That defeasance could be $250,000 and then that mill rate goes down. What I still would like to see the board to continue with that defeasance model though, because it has given us the opportunity to do things and give future boards, future me, future Shelley, something to work with and strategies to deploy for either paying off debt more quickly or how you could structure your debt payments in the future and things like that, so.
I have a question. So I'm not really in favor of a $130,000 deficit every year, but just to look at it a different way, how many, if we retained X amount of kids that did open enrollment, how many of those would it take to make up that $130,000?
That's a good point.
I think a special ed open enrollment is 12,000 is the reimbursement per student, and I think a general ed is 8.5. Does that sound right to you, Jen?
I think that's a little, yeah, it's in the high eights. I'd have to look it up next, sorry, I should have had that number.
It's between 8,000 and 9,000 for a non-special education student to open enroll.
You have to have 15
Yeah.
plus.
So a third of the population in the school.
So some of you had asked why we would only start license for 47 when we know that, or for 50, pardon me, knowing that the needs are much greater. Honestly, we are also concerned about finding staff, right? We are at September 16th and we don't have all of our support staff positions filled for this school year yet. So we are concerned about jumping into something way too big that we are unsuccessful at it, as opposed to starting smaller and making sure that we can launch it successfully and everyone has a good experience with it, as opposed to trying to do too much before moving forward. It doesn't mean that we are stuck there forever, that license can always be applied for to grow to the 100 center, but we are also concerned about the ability to staff. I don't know if you saw, there was just a press release from the governor that talked about one of the greatest challenges in childcare was staffing, and so we don't have access to these imaginary people either.
So we had talked about a referendum, and just thinking of your success with the referendums in the past, why is it that we would not take this to the community for a vote?
So if you're asking, I don't know if you're asking for an advisory referendum where we just ask them, should we spend this out of Fund 80? I'm not familiar with school district advisory referendum like we see from the state sometimes. If we're asking them, are you willing to allow us to fund $138,000, tell me, Joe. $138,000, or for the first year, $333,000. As you can see, it is 17 cents per thousand. The cost of going to a referendum is pretty significant, and that's a really, really, really small ask for that. The other thing that we had talked about, and that might have been that one board meeting that you had missed, there are a lot of referendum restrictions being put on school districts. We are very much in the minority in that we've not gone for a revenue limit override. We've never asked our community if we can spend more than our revenue limit for operational costs. It's always been for facilities. And again, I'm going to say way more than half of school districts have an operating referendum to, instead of making the reductions that we do each year to fit into our budget, they ask their community to fund more money. If we go to referendum for $333 for childcare and the community votes no, and the biennium budget comes around and let's say they decide to increase the low revenue limit, we would be punished because we had an unsuccessful referendum and therefore could not take advantage of that change in the biennium budget. And so it feels like this is a small dollar amount to risk potential future spending opportunities to ask for. So that was part of it, because a no vote on a referendum limits you moving forward. And so it seemed that there was support for a small impact through Fund 80, and so that's what we recommended first.
And then as far as curriculum, how would that be purchased and paid for?
So we would hire a center director who likely has experience in childcare. And so when Jill had the supplies and what else did you have in there? You had in the budget, let me go back.
3,000 for daily materials and
Yeah.
supplies.
Yep. So that was included in the budget pieces that Jill had shared.
And that would come out of the Fund 80?
Correct.
Correct.
And so, all of this, everything on this budget would be a combination of the fees that are collected from the families that are paying in and from Fund 80. So all of this budget would be that budget center.
Which is, the tuition from the parents is 610, this estimate, right, is 610,000 of the 748,000 expenditure. So the difference between those two is 138,000. So a large portion of the cost of the childcare would be funded by the parent tuition that they would pay each week for childcare.
And as Jill said, one person taking family health insurance, so that deficit is 138. If we have one employee that we estimated would need family insurance and they don't need family insurance, that's a $20,000 lopped off of that 138. So when you start looking at benefits for people, that money goes up and comes down very quickly depending on whether they need the health insurance or not.
Do the fees align with like the Black River
Yeah.
care?
Yeah.
Because I was talking to Elaine, she said they're not at capacity.
Is she Blair Taylor or
No,
Bragg?
one by the hospital.
Oh.
Which I assumed that they were, because
I think they are. I think they've got a wait list.
What did you say? They're not?
At capacity, he doesn't think. He thinks that there's fluctuations.
Yeah, I know they have, but last I knew they had a wait list.
I think it depends on the age level. Honestly, I don't
she
know.
had done some helping them a little bit too and stuff.
Yep, she absolutely is. So she's
Along with
working,
the Alma Center School District.
and I thought she was in Blair Taylor School. No, she's.
Oh.
She's in Alma Center.
Okay,
She
sorry.
has her own
Oh,
group
sorry.
center and Elm Center.
Sorry, thank you.
And
But-
I don't know, she had told me that the one at the hospital or Black River something or other wasn't like full, which I was like surprised.
So the 4-year-olds, with us making the change to full day 4K for 4 days, is creating a weird spot on Fridays because, and I don't blame them. For example, BRAC, you have to pay for the whole week if you're only sending your child on Friday. And that takes a slot those other 4 days that they don't need. And so you can see on Jill's estimate, we said, do we do something different for 4K? And so we heard that Blast already has a wait list. It would be great if we could bring 4K there, but clearly there's more people that need those spots. We don't necessarily want to take away from kids that it's already serving, so we wondered if there needs to be some kind of after-school model or Friday model for the 4K kids that we could help out with too.
teacher, like for, like say a 3-year-old, go back to where you were, Jill. For like a 3-year-old, they can only watch 11 kids.
Yeah.
That'll be like 2 people maybe.
And so the problem comes in, even if we have 4K there just on Friday, it has to fit under that 50 licensing. So that's why we're trying to decide, but because there are students, we could do an after-school program not associated with the daycare center too for Friday. So those are all things that still need some ironing, for sure.
Last time Casey was saying that we should go to the people for the referendum. I like his idea to have a referendum. We should not make a decision without asking people. So since we have good track record of successful referendum, Red Creek is one of the examples. So I think so referendum is a good idea. Let's go to the people.
Okay, just to clarify that, if the car asked the same questions that Jeanette did, and that's what Shelley told us in that meeting, because Jeanette wasn't there, she heard it firsthand tonight. Same questions, same answers. So I wasn't petitioning or saying anything about needing to go to a referendum. I was asking why we weren't. So the same thing that Jeanette asked basically. So
So sorry if I didn't understand. I am in the favor of referendum. Let's go to the people. We are their representative. Let's see what they say. I received so many calls, emails that you guys are going to take away our small businesses of childcare. And I go like, where are your businesses? They do have in different houses. So I think so let's go to the people. This is my take.
So if I could ask, if you are having those conversations with childcare providers, we would love to engage them in discussions. I've met with a couple of providers already that are giving us advice about how to build it successfully because they know that the needs are so great. So I have not heard from any providers that are concerned that they're going to be run out of business. My understanding has always been that there's plenty of kids needing care, that everybody can be full. So I have not heard that before.
Since it is high in demand, as you are saying, then let's ask the people. They will definitely approve it in the referendum. Just few minutes ago, Nick Helst is talking about some childcare center in the hospital.
next to the hospital.
Next to the hospital.
Childcare center in town.
Yes, near.
And I talked to Elaine Atla. She'd be happy to come in. She was partnering with Elma Center, who are looking at also doing a school-based model, and she'd be happy to come in and talk to the board and kind of discuss how that is going and how it's working. I'd asked her to maybe do that.
Just a reminder, we did discuss, and I could be wrong, even if the referendum wasn't passed or approved by the people, we could still vote as a board to disregard that and go forward, just to be clear, or do I misunderstand?
A little misunderstanding. So at the annual meeting is when the budget will be approved and every elector who is there gets a vote and they will vote to approve a budget, but that is not a referendum, that is just who happens to come that night. And then that is advisory to the board, who will have a special meeting right after that annual meeting, and you can still make your decision. That larger group was advisory. So close, just not the referendum word in there.
So it's a way to get the people to weigh in and see what you're taking the temperature of where people are at with it. So I'm of this mindset that if the people don't feel like it's a good idea, you're probably not going to be real successful anyway. So I feel like that annual meeting, if I'm hearing you correctly, is an opportunity to kind of get a feel for where people are at.
Those that attend that meeting, yeah.
So we cannot have a vote for the referendum or no referendum. Can we?
We can.
We can?
Are you making a motion? Is that what you're
No,
asking?
no, I'm not making it as yet unless this discussion is fully mature and we hear from Alma Center. And we did hear from you last time, your presentation. So let's hear from many people and then we could have a voting whether there should be a referendum or no referendum.
Who have you talked to, like, you said you talked to some people in childcare?
Anne Smetna has come and met, and she had lots and lots of ideas. She actually was in her home care provider for a long time, and now she's still licensed as an in-home provider, but it's not in her house, it's in a separate facility, and she was just talking about how great that was. She was wondering if we had some spaces over at Gebhardt to rent out to other individual providers who might also be willing to do it but not want it in their home. And I just said, that's an interesting idea. I don't know if that is the direction the committee will go. But that was something that she suggested. She gave some great thoughts on timing. She's been doing it for a lot of years. She's had a wait list, and she just said, don't accept anything less than 5 days. Don't like she had a lot of start at this time, end at this time, and she told me the favorite snacks. And she also said she would be very, very happy to come talk to the board about her perspective on the needs of childcare in our community, being one of our providers. So I certainly could ask her to come to the October board meeting as well if you're interested in hearing from her.
Do you think it'd be worth just throwing out, like, to the community, like, just to gather information, like people that maybe would be interested in, like, renting a space and not utilizing the district's energy per se to, I know there's advantages of the district doing it too. But I mean, obviously that there's going to be, it's going to take some of your time. It's going to take some of Jill's time. You know, it's going to drain the energy that you guys have that's already spread kind of thin, I guess you'd say.
So wondering if somebody was interested in renting that space for a childcare center? Is that what you're suggesting?
Correct. I mean, if there's interest or not, I don't know if that's the direction that would make sense or not, but I mean, it does in ways and doesn't in other ways, you know.
What are the thoughts of the rest of the board?
I do like that. I mean, we're opening it up. You could still bring revenue in to the district if you rented out the space.
I think Michaela should talk about what the childcare network is doing already in that area.
We have gotten a little over $1 million in capital to build out a micro center and 3 incubators, for lack of. An incubator is basically like a pod of home providers. So we're currently canvassing the community, trying to figure out what spaces would make the most sense for us to be doing that type of work. And in those situations, a micro center, what it does is pushes some of the childcare capacity out into like the rural parts of the county, but allows us to kind of have one administrative body to cut down on the cost. So that's a really unique thing that has kind of taken hold nationwide. And then these incubators or pods we found when we contacted all the childcare providers in Jackson County that some of the things that is a kind of a struggle for our home providers is feeling really isolated and not feeling like they have a community of providers that they can kind of be in contact with and in conversation with throughout their experience. And the other is that sometimes it's exhausting to have it in your home. Like, you want your home to be your home and your work to be your work. And so the kind of consensus was if we could do a pilot where we use some of those, some of that funding that we received from appropriations to renovate spaces, we can utilize those as incubators, pilot incubators, and a micro center model. So we'd be one of the few people in the state trying it. We're a little bit ahead of the curve on some of our other, counties that are surrounding us, but we do have funding for those activities already. Whereas, it would spread the care out a little bit across the county.
So to Nick's point, could the district apply for some of those grant funds to do the initial remodeling that is going to be necessary, whether we're doing childcare or other providers are doing childcare?
So, those funds have been earmarked for certain types of projects. I do kind of love the idea of surveying our parents and our local businesses to get a little bit more data in terms of kind of where their needs at and what they're willing to see. Our data that we pulled last, like I said, was right after COVID, so it still kind of had a lingering COVID flare. And I think it is probably time for us to pull some new data, and I don't think that's a bad question to ask. So I would be totally interested in, not as a school board member, but recommending for the Jackson County Child Care Network to move forward in doing some of those surveys.
Michaela, so what that does though is take current slots and move them to another spot, right? We're not necessarily, hopefully you would increase spots or slots, but we can only have so many at-home providers together in one building, so.
Correct. Two, yes, in most cases. So regulation-wise, there's some things you'd have to look at. I will say that so yes, 2 providers in one space would be the limit, and family providers have a very small amount that they can take. So the Jackson County Child Care Network is making 2 efforts. One is to retain, we don't want to lose the very few slots that we do have. And so one of our efforts is to continually nurture those providers that we have within our community and say, hey, what do you need? How can we be supportive? What kinds of things can we do to make sure that you are having the resources that you need to be successful? So in one breath, we're trying to kind of do this retain the current slots. In the other breath, we're trying to grow spots too. So how that data comes back will kind of help shape what would be our best method of kind of tackling it as a community. What we have seen in other districts who have taken on the school model is it's just a powerful way to reach those kids because it's a connection that families already have. So when it comes to growing spots, it tends to be a really strong and kind of successful model.
And so can I just ask again, just because I know she asked it and I want to be clear. So there can be a maximum of 2 family providers.
I'm gonna have to look at the regulations on that. I believe, Jill, I think you're right, but I have to.
And each family provider has to cap out at?
It depends on the ratios, but it does not have the bandwidth that this would have.
It's usually about 8.
It's about 8, yeah.
6 to 8.
So we're talking about that whole facility
Would only be
serving
able to
maximum
facilitate.
20 students.
Probably 16.
Probably 16.
I just want to ask because I don't know these things.
That's why I would like to check the regulations before I speak. I know we're in the ballpark with ratios, but this has much better bandwidth for how many kiddos you could serve, for sure.
And Michaela, is it based on age ratio?
Yep. So infants are definitely your most kind of cost. There's only four infants to 1 adult. And so as they get bigger and as they age, your ratio grows. So your toddlers, it's going to be, and as they go up, it becomes 6 to 8 to, depending on the school agers, is kind of a free for all, but not really. But they all have ratios that are going in accordance with their age because infants are just harder.
Right.
Janetta made me giggle when we were reading. It went from infants to wobblers to toddlers, and I had not heard a stage of kids called wobblers, so I liked that a lot.
Can't quite walk, but they
Right. I would work the wobbler room. That's what I would like.
Yeah. We both wobble.
So with the discussion here, I think there is some essence of time or sensitivity.
I'm really concerned about a widespread community survey. So I heard the 2 of you, and I'm like,
Right.
So we might be a little bit behind the curve to try to gather that information and to still be able to put this into effect potentially in October when we have to make that's when we have to make the decision whether we're going to use Fund 80 or we're not.
Correct.
So time is tight. And I guess as a board we've got to decide, are we, 7 of us, willing to make the decision without the data? Because if we're not, then we're probably have asked these gals to pull all this stuff together to try to have it ready for that decision in October, or we need to delay it because it's not going to happen this year.
And it would be a full year.
Yeah, it'd be a full year, but then you would have that time to get the data for yourself to help you make an informed decision.
and I want to remind everyone that Child Care Task Force has a wealth of data. Mary Ann Torkelson can come back and do her presentation. There is no question that we are in a childcare desert. That is an irrefutable fact. You can decide whether we want to try to be part of the solution or not. That 100% is your choice. But when we talk about data, we have data that says there are not enough childcare slots for the number of individuals seeking childcare in our community. So I just don't want to confuse
Yes, we
matters.
definitely have a tremendous amount of data that I don't think it would hurt to pull it again. I
Yeah,
don't
pull
think
it to
it's gonna
share
come
here
back
for
that
sure.
quickly.
I get nervous when we talk about a community survey on September 16th and needing the data by October 28th. That feels like,
So you have a monthly meeting in October, then we have the annual one, like what?
Me too, yeah.
Yep.
but what specifically do we need? What specific data are you asking for that you don't have?
From my standpoint, it was this data that you put together and provided for us, like what's the impact? And this is, I mean, I get this is theoretical.
And I also need to add,
you know,
we have to put
but-
a budget in the paper.
Right.
We have to, for the annual meeting, for the budget hearing, we have to put a budget in the paper with a tax levy estimated. So,
I guess the way I look at it is, okay, there's a need, we have a building. So do we manage it ourselves or rent it out and let somebody else manage it? You know?
And I thought the Child Care Network has talked about the fact that there's not somebody waiting to open another center. That was my understanding, that they're trying to foster the in-home providers to perhaps come together, but there's not somebody else waiting to operate a center. I'm going to look up, Jill did a quick search of all of the Fund 80 levies in the state, how many school districts have a Fund 80 levy and what their dollar amount is, but it doesn't say what they spend them on. I'm wondering if we ask them how many school districts have, there has to be somebody we can ask. I just think that it feels very new to you, and I believe it is quite commonplace. I think there are a lot of school districts doing this, and perhaps that would help you to feel more confident. So I will see if we can find out either from the daycare licensing or from DPI how many school districts are using a Fund 80 to support a school, it's called a school board sponsored childcare. And whether that changes your mind or not, it at least is another tidbit of information for you to have.
And I think Alma Center is, I think they're targeting 92 or 96 spots in their referendum. Theirs is much more costly than ours is, because they have,
They're adding a building,
Right,
right?
yeah,
They're building a
yeah.
building.
they're building
Yeah.
space.
yeah.
And Elaine is doing, because we can't find a center director, it's complicated, but I think it's gonna be something where we're gonna need a director to run the center as well. And it won't fall, so it doesn't fall on Shelley, it'll have its own management.
So Jill, the piece with the defeasance, like, so the gap right now is this 138,000, right? Essentially, right? And you talked about that can go up and down by 20K based on people selecting healthcare or not selecting healthcare, right? So it's fluid, okay? It shouldn't go up, but it could go down, right? The gap could go down.
It could go up, I'm not gonna say
Okay,
that it
okay,
couldn't,
all right,
because
so-
I was kind of middle of the
Okay,
road.
that's fine,
Yeah.
fine. So if we were to just say like in 24, 25, we're gonna take the difference and not do the defeasance for the 1 year, just so that the impact was less on the taxpayer. You know, it's 1 year that we're not doing the defeasance, and then you go right back to the 300 the following year. That's just a thought for the board to think about. I mean, there's things that we could ask to do here, so that the impact is pennies, you know, which rather than 17 cents, the impact could be 2 cents or 3 cents or 5 cents on, you know.
Right, like that 2 cents and 1 cent, we could make that go away by changing the $300,000
Exactly.
for certain.
It'd be
Absolutely.
less than
And I'm not
yeah.
saying, like,
Yep.
I completely understand what you're doing with the debt pay down and how, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because in the end, we're paying a lot less in interest for what we.
That is absolutely another option,
Yep,
absolutely.
so just keep this, everybody, just keep that in mind, like, this isn't the only thing that we could ask to do, this is just the best plan that the ladies came up with at this time, so.
Have we brought this to the township board and presented to them?
All of the municipalities, there's 19 of them, no, we have not.
Because each township is different as far as their own ability to have an increase in taxes, a little bit more poor than other townships. So I just am curious if we have addressed this with the township boards, or even just presented the information to them and asked their opinion. I mean,
Certainly not yet. We've been working with this board right now, so no, we have not.
I think
What would
the
you be asking them
catalyst-
to do tonight? You're just looking for them to say like, yeah, we think our taxpayers could
afford it.
handle the increase or not handle it, or?
Because, the townships are different based, as far as who can afford it, who owns a home, who doesn't. It's part of getting input from community, the different townships.
Just to touch a little bit on that, the catalyst for the entire network was the fact that businesses, local businesses here in Jackson County, our local businesses, came together and did a research study to understand the economic impact that lack of childcare was having here in Jackson County, and concluded prior to COVID that we were taking a $2.5 million hit annually in Jackson County due to lack of childcare. And so I think it's also important to understand that by increasing the availability of childcare, that will have an economic impact on our own revenue as well. So where we look at the cost, we also, I think, want to then factor in that we are reducing that economic impact substantially by increasing. So as much as I hear what you're saying, that would be my kind of the other thing to kind of consider.
Again, it was previous board, but the community engagement pillar of our strategic plan, one of the objectives under that pillar was to start a business partnership group. And so right now it's Dr. Sullivan and Jill that facilitate that, and that group has overwhelmingly asked us, can't you possibly, you're in the kid business, can't you possibly help with childcare? And again, those are business people, they're not representative of all taxpayers, but that was the strategic initiative of the district to start that business partnership committee. And so that has been happening for years, which is why this conversation has been kind of slow simmering for a lot of years and finally moving forward this year.
Can you give us an example, Jill, of the cost to a homeowner based on their property value of what this increase would look like if, let's say, for funsies, your house costs $300,000. Your additional cost to you in regard to this childcare center would be what actual amount?
3 times 1656.
Yeah, so if you look at, this amount right here, $158,000, that would be the Fund 80 levy. That's compared to, we're doing $20,000 right now, right?
Sure.
But the total levy here is $8,035,000. I picked this example because it's a little bit easier math. And this is $8,135,000. So this is $100,000 more in levy.
Spread across.
Our property value went up a little bit in this example, not very much, I think less than 1%. And so that is 2 cents more than it was in 23-24. 2 cents equates to $1.81, literally $1.81 on a $100,000 valued house.
So
for a $200,000 valued house, it'd be $3.60.
So for all those communities, there's a potential that they could have to pay $1 or $2 more in taxes.
Okay. On year 2, Amy.
What was that?
On year 2.
Yeah.
Year one is more.
Year one
is more substantial.
Year one in this.
Dollars, literally that. Okay.
Year one in this example, we kept the defeasance the same. The reason we kept it the same was to kind of show apples to apples. But as Casey pointed out, that $300,000 could go away.
Sure.
This Fund 80 levy becomes $50,000 difference in the whole levy.
Yeah. Okay.
And so make no mistake, we're still using Fund 80 to support school board sponsored childcare. It's just not having as dramatic of an impact in that year one. So I just don't want to make it sound like that makes it all better for those of you that are concerned about using Fund 80, because it's still using Fund 80, it's just not doing the defeasance and that at the same time.
Right, and we've considered what that would cost the homeowners, like $1 or $2-ish. Is that a good? Okay.
anything else you would like? I'm going to look up the number of schools just so that you have that in your back pocket. When I find it, I'll email it out to you. Any other information you need from us?
Do you think that like our October meeting, we could add that Marianne took?
Absolutely. Marianne, and if you would like Elaine to come, we certainly can.
I think that'd be all right.
By October though, we too late to get something in the paper.
Yeah.
So
That's-
I'm going back to, I will need to publish some sort of estimated tax rate. Again, we don't have all the final numbers from the state until we get our equalized value, our equalized aid, and then we set our tax levy. That doesn't happen fully until after October 15th, so
Okay.
we don't know, we won't know that. So I'd like to know whether you'd like me to include it in this estimate, and if so, at what level, or not. I guess that's what I need to know for publishing the budget.
Can I ask a question? The information, the data that Marianne has, how current is it?
I'm sorry, I don't know that.
It's gonna be the same data that I presented
Oh,
3 weeks ago,
Everything you saw.
okay.
for the most part, yeah. It's our research we did.
Was
It's a network research, so it'll be about the same. Excuse me?
COVID, before COVID?
That was before and after. If you look at the, and like I said, I let people know, it's posted all over the community. So if you go to Tyson's or you go down to Lunda or, I'm not even sure if Lunda still has that, but we've been having it rotate around the community. So our interns have been kind of plastering it. So if you keep an eye out, you guys can definitely go take a look at it. And it's all posted and you'll be able to see when it was taken and what the impact was and kind of what the data looked like. So I encourage people to get out there and check it out because it was a lot of work that went into it and a lot of data. I love data, so it it was a fun project and it continues to be an amazing community effort. So the research that Marianne has will be similar to what I've presented.
And you didn't give out in the July meeting any sheets, did you?
I think there was
It was
something in
in
the
the board
packet.
packet.
There was I can pull it out again, but there was something in the packet
look
that was
in
like a
it.
slide deck.
I must have
Yep.
bypassed that.
Yeah.
I think it was a slide deck that had different things.
Okay.
It was my PowerPoint, I believe.
Yeah.
Marianne.
Sorry, I call it a
PowerPoint,
slide.
Yeah. It's we called it a data walk, and the whole community was and all the businesses were involved in coming together to look at it and kind of come up with solutions. So we keep it posted. We can post some more if people want it, and just keep us posted on what you guys are thinking.
And so to me, like all the information Michaela put together, just my own opinion, basically just helped to show that there was a need. Right? That the community, there's a need for this in the community. So I don't know what more I would ask from her or from anybody else to come and prove that there's a need,
Yes.
So it's,
Elaine might be a little bit able to speak to the process if that was something you guys were, because she's really going through it with another school district right now and fairly successfully in understanding how the impact of the school childcare can work with the local providers, not as adversaries to them. So she would be able to speak to that a little bit too.
So back to Jill's question.
Sorry.
No, that's
yeah, I
great.
think timing wise, I'm not sure what we really, everybody I think we gotta make a decision tonight on whether or not we're putting this into the annual or we're gonna hold back another year. I mean, that's really, cause I don't,
Well-
so,
Also, what we've done sometimes is when we've decided on what level of defeasance to do, we present 2 items at the annual meeting.
okay.
And then the board makes a decision after the meeting.
Particularly because it has to be posted in the paper before our state aid is verified, so you usually do a more conservative estimate, and then what happens that night is always slightly different just because of the weird timing of state aid, so. And back to your previous point, if we stuck to the 630 and a much smaller impact, knowing that the flexibility could lie in the defeasance, that is also helpful, right?
Yeah, I'm probably conservative on the equalized value. That's likely gonna be higher,
Yeah,
meaning that mill rate is gonna even drop further.
right.
So it's more what levy you wanna back into.
So do we publish as presented since it's more conservative? Is that the words?
I was just gonna ask Joel, what would be helpful if they gave you a maximum tax rate that they'd like you to work into?
Yes.
And then figure out what defeasance could still happen with the one-time costs and the first year estimated deficit. And then again, the defeasance is the variable. Would that be helpful or would
Yes.
Okay. So for example, right now she says it's going to be 17 cents per thousand equalized property value. You could say, I make a motion that it is 5 cents or 7 cents, and then the rest is the defeasance. Oh, not, it can't go that low though.
No.
Sorry.
Or target a tax rate, or target,
So
you know,
if we did back out the entire defeasance,
right.
what would that?
That's way more than you have to do though. You don't have to go that aggressive, like you just need to make up the 138.
No, because first
Wait,
year
first
is
year.
one-time expenses.
Yeah.
So,
So the first year is 333. So if we take out the entire defeasance at 300, there would still be that 33,000.
53, right?
correct,
Oh,
so then.
sorry,
fund-
sorry,
I
there's
just
the
wanna
other
make sure I'm
20.
looking at the right numbers,
Yep, the other 20 that we're currently spending on Fund 30.
Correct, so
Sorry.
Fund 80, so a defeasance for Fund 39 would be 0, Fund 80 would be 53,735, an additional $33,000. In this model. I don't have all the numbers, but that's certainly a model I could target. And we would have all the numbers by the annual meeting, and then you could still decide after that.
So you could give us an option too, or decide that night.
Or do we want to put it forth as is and we can reduce it after the annual meeting then? Is that?
I mean, to me, the 17-cent impact is, it's pretty minimal at that, even leaving the defeasance in. And especially when it's based upon the value of the home that you own, right? So, like, the folks that own properties that are of higher value, it will be minimal impact to them, that they have to pay a little bit more. It's it's people with a little less property value might be a little bit more paycheck to paycheck and how they live the lifestyles. So, trying to make that as less impactful is probably a good thing for us to keep in mind. So, but it's $200,000. It's a 34-cent impact on their taxes. So that's not a lot to sacrifice.
Well, obviously the hope is that long term this is very beneficial economically.
Yeah,
Right,
to the
and
community
that's-
as a whole, like that's really the key. I mean, it's to help to drive growth of this community, which impactfully our school district is helping to supply the workers that are going to help to keep that growth happening, right? So, I mean, I would make a motion to present it in this fashion, and then also in the fashion where the defeasance is foregone for the first year, and give us the choice between those two to pick from. Or either there's basically minimal impact on the taxpayer or the impact that's shown on this paper right now.
I'm going to second that so we can open discussion. And then my question right away for Jill is, how do we post that in the paper? Do we do the more conservative, the higher mill rate in the paper in the name of transparency? Is that?
That's what I would do.
And then we can just prepare slides both ways for the annual meeting and let the electors know.
That gives some feedback. Yeah.
Okay. Further discussion on that one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So that 5-4, 2 against. All right. We have direction. Okay, next the school calendar.
That would be me again. So, remember in February asking Shelley specifically about the school calendar. Number one, if it was legit, if we could really do that. And assured that we would inform the parents. But what I'm understanding now is that parents were not given the option, it was mandatory. And according to DPI, that following under a summer school program, you cannot count instructional days.
Right, and nor are we. So I just want to clarify, we absolutely took attendance because when we do summer school, we need attendance. So we absolutely took attendance, but not in Skyward. So Skyward is our student information system, our SIS. That's where we take attendance every other all school year. So we did not take attendance in there, like our food service. We did not, kids didn't get scanned because our summer food service program is free. So we did take attendance. And the middle school, I remember Mr. Nortman told me that he called a family and they said, why are you calling if the days aren't required? And he said, quite honestly, I wanted to make sure that you knew that your child wasn't here, right? Usually during the school year, there's the robocalls because we mark them absent in Skyward, then the robocalls go out. There were no robocalls because Skyward was not utilized. It was more of a safety check-in. I talked to Mrs. Penza. She had a parent that was saying, my child doesn't have to come, and she said, you're absolutely right, your child doesn't have to come. When I talked to the individual from DPI, she said, what types of activities have you been doing? And I said, there's a whole lot of icebreakers, there's a whole lot of rule review. To be honest, the technology wasn't working very well in the district. I don't know if you heard about that from many people, but it was very frustrating. And so there was a lot of review and ready to launch forward is what was happening. And I explained that, and I told the lady from DPI, I said, I didn't change the school calendar that we posted for families. I said, honestly, when I looked at other districts that have been doing that, I didn't notice that they had done that. So I mirrored what we did after the surrounding districts. And she said, if you decide to do this in the future, make sure you highlight those days a different color. I said, got it, will do. You asked me at the board meeting if families would be told that it was summer school. When we sent out the school calendar, like I said, I didn't note it on there, but anyone that asked, I absolutely did. So remember that the state now counts instructional minutes, not days. So where perhaps that got lost was that we can't count those for student instructional minutes for the school year, but we can count them as teacher contract days. So teachers have 189 contract days, and those 3 days counted in their contract days. What that did was make the window a little bit smaller of how much time we have available for inclement weather this winter, because we had 3 days that didn't count towards our instructional minutes. Last year we had 1 snow day. The year before that, I think we had like 16 of them, right? So in our calendar, there are about 8 days that are over the instructional minutes that are required. So DPI sets the minimum. We have about 8 days above that minimum, which means we can call 8 inclement weather days without having to change our calendar to make up that time.
So were students given assignments during those days?
I believe they were, but I was very clear with all admin that if students were not there those 3 days, or they couldn't get their technology to work, that those assignments could not be held over their head for the following week, is what I clarified after talking to the DPI.
And then parents were told, though, that if their child didn't show up for school, that they would not be able to practice and attend, be part of the games or the event that took place in the evening. So so that has been said to parents, and that is a concern of mine, because then we are breaking, and that is wrong.
Did you receive any complaints at like the district level from parents?
I did not. If you could tell me after the meeting who you believe said those words, because I was pretty clear to the whole admin team, so I don't know who said that, and so I can't address it if I don't know who. So if you could tell me, I would appreciate that. Coaches do have the right to decide who gets playing time based off of whether they attended the weight room or whether they, right, coaches do have that authority to decide who's getting on the field based off of effort and things that they've done before that. But I don't know in what context that was stated.
And if these days were optional and parents were aware of it, that they were optional, then it should not be held against if their child gets to play, or even if they attend the practice that night, they should still be able to practice and still be able to be part of the game or the event that is taking place. So this is what parents have been told, that yes, it was required and that they were taking attendance, and yes, it would be held against their child if they did not show up.
So I'm going to need a lot more details because I was very clear to the admin team. So I'm going to need details of who said what.
After numerous conversations between parents, then it finally came out that it was not mandatory and optional, and if there was assignments, that the child would have to go to the teacher and find out what needed to be completed.
And so I started this by saying way last February that there are schools all around us that are doing this. This is the first time that we were going to do it. I asked my colleagues down at CISA if anybody else has had pushback. They have not. I'm uncertain why this is such a bone to be picked in our community, but so be it, so be it.
I think it is a matter of being very open
I
and
said it in the
transparent.
public board meeting. There's been no secrets about that. No secrets about it.
Right, but that's why I asked if you would share that with the parents to make sure that it wasn't optional for their child to attend school those 3 days. Because it was gonna come around,
and so some people have said to me like it was a bad thing, so you did this so that you can get more money. Yup, we sure did. We absolutely did this so that we could afford to make all day 4K. That was 100, and I said it again at that board meeting when this board decided to make it all day 4K. I said, remember that income that we're gonna get from those 3 days of summer school launch are going to allow us to pay for that teacher. I don't know if all of you remember that, but I 100% said that when that decision was made. And so I feel like I've been very clear, and it 100% was for the revenue, so that.
oh, I agree with you.
Okay,
You did
okay.
say that.
I just want to be clear.
I'm not disagreeing that it wasn't for the money.
Well, and instruction, right?
I feel like
I mean, it's more instruction.
Well, and also so many people in the community have like gone over like student success and how we need to improve, and all sarcasm aside, as a parent, I can't think of one reason why, if we're having such a hard time, I would keep my children home for those 3 days, but by all means, go for it.
Okay.
So
And I'm
you
not
are okay violating state statute.
There was a
59.
parent.
We did, and I
There
spoke
was
to
a
DPI myself,
Parent
actually.
that reached out to Mrs. Penza like 3 times, and she just said, you are correct, your daughter does not need to come to school, and the daughter still chose to come to school. So mom said, no, she's not coming, and the daughter still came because she wanted to be by her friends. So.
Well, and if you
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to recognize you, that's Brad's job, I apologize.
Are you done, Amy? Yeah.
Well, I just think like as a parent, sure, I'm a board member, but I'm also a parent. I can't think of one good reason. So I hope maybe Jeanette can share with us and enlighten us all as to what good reason a parent may have. And I'm not being funny, but is it just like a battle of attrition? Like, I'm not sending my kids these 3 days because they don't have to. I just can't think on my own of one good reason why, if the first day of school was on this day, why I would be like, I'm not sending my kids to school, dang it, they're not gonna learn these extra 3 days. Did they have like a reason, or is there not an actual reason?
Some parents had said, had they known that their child did not need to attend those days, they would have opted to do something at the very end. Some people's work schedules do not always work for summer sessions, and they have to take their vacation when their boss allows them. So that was one of the examples that a parent gave to me. The second was the parents, that they were not aware that this was an optional. And as parents, they want to have that option. And it isn't fair to us to say or not say that their child needs to be in school. It is a parent, if they're optional days, that is up to the parents whether or not to send. But I do know that there was a comment in February that said that if we don't want the parents to really know that it's optional, because the more kids that are in the school, the more dollars that we would get for summer school. And that was said in that February meeting. And I just wanted us to be clear, to share with the parents, these were optional, and that we were doing things legally. And that was my concern then, and it's still today. Just because of giving assignments, doing instruction. Yeah, there were fun days. I saw that the first day. I looked at the pictures, and I loved what they were doing at the high school. But there were also students that were getting assignments. And in my understanding,
So summer school gives assignments too, just to be clear.
They
I'm
do,
just
but-
gonna be clear. So you can be extremely disappointed, this board can agree to never do this again. That is 100% your decision. If we never wanna do this again, that is absolutely fine. I can sleep at night, I talked to DPI, I told them, I said, this was our first year trying it. I 100% learned, I knew more in June than I did in February when we first talked about it. I have a group of colleagues that I meet with down at CISA every month, and I've asked how many people do the Jumpstart summer school days, and well over half of them do it, and they've just never had this kind of pushback on it. And so again, it is your choice. You approve a school calendar each year. If you don't like it, we don't ever have to do it again.
so my question to you was, a waiver was to be filed.
Only if we wanted it to count as instructional minutes. We weren't asking for it to count as instructional minutes. So we didn't have to file a waiver because we didn't want instructional minutes. In fact, the previous year, we did do a waiver because DPI was very, they even said, we're very open with the waivers because it's still post-COVID. So the previous year, we did the waiver, and we intentionally did not because we weren't planning on counting them as instructional minutes.
And yet the teachers still had to be there.
Yes. The
Because it's
teachers,
part of,
I mean, they have an employment contract, we can tell them when they have to be there, so it's not about the teachers at
that
all.
was part of those
It's about the
180
students.
days.
89,
For the,
yep.
whatever it is, right.
Mr. Carr?
Yes, if we see 2022, 2023, last year's budget, that is $28 million divided by 180 days. So each day our school district is spent $155,000 to run the school. So we opened the school 3 days prior. That is almost $500,000. $477,000 we have invested for opening the school before the schedule. And the rule of law says that these parents are sending me, could you please read the rule of law? It is very clear we can't open it.
And yet this board approved it, just to be clear.
That a board approved it because I have no access to my attorney. So I am not attorney, I don't know the law. This $477,000, who is going to pay? The taxpayers? This is really
The same number of days as I had the year before.
So what are we,
This email so that you can
Yep,
share that.
I'm not reading it right now, but I can look at it later.
Well, I feel it needs to be addressed now, because we're on this topic.
Can I see this, please?
Would you please just read the email?
No, this has employee and parent names here. We're not gonna share this.
You can read the detail of the email, you don't have to say names.
So Jeanette, I'm not sure what you're seeking in this conversation. I've told you we don't ever have to do it again. I have talked to DPI, I've been open and honest with them. I have made corrections with the admin team. I have done all of the things. We can go down on record as saying this community doesn't like it and we won't do it again. That is okay. If you want to hear me publicly say that I screwed up, I'm telling you, I learned a lot through the process. I followed the pattern of all the other school districts that do it. And if our community, how many times have we heard, it's not about what everyone else does, it's about our community. We tried something, our community doesn't like it, we don't have to do it again. I don't know what else you're hoping to come out of this discussion.
I'd vote for it again, and I wasn't even part of the original vote, just because it makes a lot of sense.
Well,
We've got all these
there
kids
was,
struggling.
there was transparency, it was voted on by the board that we would start earlier, and it was our first time doing it. I did my due diligence, I contacted DPI myself. The lady and I did, all sarcasm aside, have a little laughter about parents not wanting their kids in school for 3 extra days, because we would assume that maybe that would have been a good thing, which is probably why we did it in the first place. We didn't, you know, and as far as attorneys go, the school district has attorneys. So we're not just breaking the law like it's our birthday, like they have to follow the law. Like we have to. So whether or not anybody has feelings about whether or not they think we did, it doesn't really matter because we did. And we have attorneys that are contracted to make sure of that. So she apologized, it's already over, move on.
Yeah, we can make a
Unless-
decision again next year on whether or not we're gonna do it again.
So I file a motion to move on because we have other things to discuss. It's already over.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, I have 6-1. We're moving on. TCO update.
I'll give a little update. Our first meeting is on Wednesday, 6 p.m. A little bit of a venue change. They're gonna try out the high school. Is it called the LMC, Shelley? Okay, high school LMC, 6 o'clock Wednesday. They've already elected new officers and have already welcomed new staff members and have hit the ground running. So everybody's welcome, 6 o'clock Wednesday at the high school.
We'll have to, I think the location was listed on our district website, so I'll make sure that it gets
I
changed to
hope
high
so,
school
yeah.
LMC.
I know it was always at Red Creek, but I think their wish is to, at least for the time being, just see how it works out over at the high school and then maybe even just move around the community a little bit to offer different spaces.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
How's the number of people that have been engaging with
It's
it?
pretty good. I did attend the last one where they elected officers and I think we're still standing at around 20-ish people. And I think they've got a lot of new members and some more interest, so it seems just to be growing and headed in the right direction.
And I've had a few people reach out to me interested in getting involved, so.
Awesome.
All right, our distinguished alumni and athletic hall of
Yeah, do you
fame.
need a drum roll? Our distinguished alumni inductee this year is Mr. Larry Lunda. We have invited him to be part of the homecoming festivities, and there were 2 fantastic nominees for the Athletic Hall of Fame. And so long time community members, coaches, athletic directors, Jim Hornby and Dave Meyer will both be inducted as well. Their families have been sent letters and been invited to the homecoming parade and to the festivities at the field. I'm gonna ask, last year we tried, so last year was hard because it rained. As soon as we got to the field, it started raining and it rained the whole time. We had a big table set up for the inductees and their families to eat, and they went through the Booster Club line to eat, and they said that it felt weird being outside off to that side, but I think it felt worse because it was raining. So since we can't control that, Mrs. Penz and I were wondering if we wanted to have them eat perhaps in the high school commons, but then felt like it would be weird because they're not by community. We wondered if maybe the board members would want to come and eat with those inductees so that they had some company to eat with before that homecoming game. And if you have other ideas for how that can feel celebratory. Again, we set up the tent on the side trying to make them very visible, and that was a hard, it didn't work out. But again, if it wasn't raining, I don't know if it would have been any better. So if you have ideas for that night, I'm wide open.
Do we
in the past, they've had those tent coverings.
We had it rained so
I do remember
hard.
that night.
Actually, Betsy sat there with an umbrella over the cake while we were trying to cut it. It was wet. Very
One
wet.
time it rained last year.
Pardon me?
It's the only day it rained last year.
Right. That's Friday, October 4th. Is that
Friday, October 4th. So we don't need to solve it tonight, but if you have ideas how to make that feel celebratory for them, we certainly would appreciate that. Before the game, we walk them down the track, and in front of the bleachers, they get announced and thunderous round of applause, and they get the opportunity to speak for a moment if they would like. All right.
So what, can you just real quick?
Friday, October 4th. There's the homecoming parade at 2, and they participated in the parade. Nick, I was going to reach out to Leonard. You knew that was coming, didn't you? I'll reach out to Leonard and ask if we can use the trailer, and I won't put that sticky two-sided tape on it this year. Are you willing to drive it, or I can see if I can find someone in town interested in driving it? What's your pleasure?
Doesn't matter.
You were pretty fancy in your big tractor last year.
Fancy.
You are. Do you want to think about it and let me know?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right.
anything further on that one? All right, on to the 7 series, Focus on Purpose. We have our data story.
I included that link for you in your packets. Did anyone have any questions about it? I would just tell you, I don't know that we have to go through it unless you have questions, but it was an exercise that was part of our technical assistance network and found that the creation of the data story was pretty great conversation and reflection, and we then charged each of the guiding coalitions from each of the individual schools to create their own data story. And so they are actively working on those and talking about when they share out with their families, here are our goals for this year, and here's our data story that goes along with it. We are, hopefully next month when you see each of the buildings' improvement plans for the year, goal plans for the year, you will appreciate the stakeholder communication map that's embedded in those. So if you have questions, we can view it. If not, I'll assume you've all clicked through.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say, Shelley, is just after reviewing everything that was there, I mean, it's still obviously apparent with the absenteeism stuff, how apparent that is for our district. So I think if we could hear from the different schools what they're doing for parental engagement, I mean, because I think we need to get the parents engaged in order to drive the absenteeism number down. So just understanding like what each school is doing to try to do that, and then maybe as a group we can come up with some ideas to help.
Perfect. I'll make sure they highlight that on their plans that they share.
I asked the same question at the last CISA meeting on that board as well, and no one had any brilliant ideas around attendance. I mean, that's all stuff we're doing currently, right? It's small bites. All right, if there's nothing else on 7.1, we have employment recommendations. Any questions? Otherwise, we need these approved.
So I'll make a motion to approve the employment recommendations.
I will second that. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The seclusion and restraint report, this is an annual viewing, is that how we say it? Annual
Review.
report to the board.
And to the state, actually, the seclusion
Yeah.
restraint. Yep.
Is for, yes, after we,
Yep.
So we have to report to you guys first, and then it goes to the state next. On the first page of the report is the definitions of what seclusion and restraint are. I don't know if you want me to read through those. I've already read through those.
We all got them, so.
Perfect, okay. So the next page is actually our data. When we look at numbers, the first row is the number of just restraints, so when a student has to be restrained for safety. The second row is the number of seclusions. And then the third one is incidents that involve seclusion and restraint, and those are separate from the first two rows. And then that bottom row is a combined total for the year for all schools. And so we have to break it down by each school and each year, and so you can kind of see the trend there. A couple things I want to point out with this, that the state actually asked us to review our data from 2022-2023 school year. If you look at those totals, there was
a bit of an uptick that particular year. And so we are in the process of doing that and looking at our practices and doing a data dig into why those instances occurred.
And so DPI is a year behind. They have asked Melanie and I to look at 22-23 Red Creek specifically. As you can see, there was a larger bubble that year, but then the next year it went right back to where it had been before, which is excellent as they're asking us to review 22-23. It is nice to be able to say 23-24 that it went back into the same range where it had been previously. But
and then I feel like when we look at this conversation, it's important to dig down a little bit further. So when you look at that total for last year, there were 37 incidents. And of those 37 incidents, we're talking about 14 students. 12 of those students have IEPs, meaning that they are identified with a disability and receive special education services. 2 were regular education students, 12 were male students, and 2 were females. When we look at the ethnicities that were involved in seclusion and restraint situations, 13 students were white, 1 student was black, and there were 0 other ethnicities identified or involved in those situations. 1 student had 7 seclusion and restraint incidents, meaning that they accounted for 7 of those 37 incidents. Another one had 6, 2 had 4, 3 students had 3 situations, and 7 students had 1, and that was it. Any questions on seclusion or restraint?
I'm just curious, I know the Red Creek, I know that's a challenging age. I'm sure Brandon would agree that, like, we have none at the middle school, which I also think of as a challenging age. Is that common amongst our peers, or, I mean, I know some of that's maturing and being able to handle emotions and things like that.
And I think what happens is that at the elementary level, they are more physically aggressive, they act out more, and at the middle school, high school level, they will tend to just walk away.
And also, we would be far more hesitant to go hands-on with a student that is physically the same size as the staff, right? Our nonviolent crisis intervention training is pretty specific that at a certain body size, it's no longer safe for anybody to do that. So the police get called more often at the middle school and high school, as opposed to using like a timeout room that we would use over at Red Creek. Your point is absolutely true. Throwing a fit at the elementary level sometimes literally means throwing over my table and yelling and screaming and hollering, and throwing a fit at the middle school means I'm storming off and I'm slamming the door real hard when I leave. So definitely different levels of how they respond when their big emotions hit them.
I know many of you are parents in here, and I think there's that line that a lot of kids walk, that they're looking for that co-regulation piece. And so at the littler levels, and what that looks like is that it's kids often coming at you or at other kids. Whereas in the middle school, high school, they've started to develop some of those skills, and like I said, they can go off on their own. They usually want to be left alone.
So when we have our school resource officer, I guess any police intervention, that does not reflect in here? Okay, because that's not our employees doing that, is that the?
It would be,
Okay.
it would be reflected in this, but I don't have data for the number of those instances and where a police officer would be.
So I just want to be clear, the definition of seclusion and restraint is really specific, that police intervention might lead to an in-school or out-of-school suspension, and that's not reflected on a seclusion and restraint. And so that would be tracked on our OSS or ISS numbers, not necessarily seclusion and restraint. Any questions about this? Thank you.
Next, the exit interview information.
Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts about what you reviewed?
I really appreciate the comment about no more alarm clock.
I appreciate you putting it together and letting me see it. I think there's a lot of positives to take from that too, not just potentially negative feedback on the district. So it was nice to see some particular faculty get called out for their extra efforts and how they made an impact on former employees. So,
Awesome. I also love that culture where we recognize those that help lift us up. I think that is a good, positive place for everyone to be.
Great. If there's no questions on that one, we've already covered 8.1. We have 8.2, Instructional Groupings Committee. Nick, are you kind of leading that, or?
Kind of. Let's see, we've had, like, since we met last week, we've had 2 different scheduled meetings to meet with the middle school math teachers, and both kind of got canceled, so.
But in the meantime, we've talked to Mr. Nortman, and Nicole has done some scouting and has found curricular resources that align to what we're using in our classrooms that are meant to be an accelerated math class. So we are working on scheduling to create a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade high math that is systemic from the publisher as opposed to our teachers. Last time we tried high math, we tried to teach 6th grade math really fast in the beginning of the year, or the first half of the year, and then 7th grade the second half of the year, and the beginning of 7th grade, and we tried to compact it, whereas Nicole has found a publisher who has done that for us, that these are all because math is so cyclical, you need these foundational skills before you move on. They've already done that work to do 6th grade high math. And just pick the pertinent pieces so that by the time you're in 8th grade, you are ready for Algebra 1. So we have found that and have talked with Mr. Nortman about possible scheduling. And the math teachers, we've got kind of some mixed reviews on it right now, but we think with some professional development, they'll feel far more confident and ready to jump in.
Sorry, Nick, that was my fault today. I was out.
It's all good.
Sorry, man.
No, it's okay.
I'll forgive you.
Okay. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I think like one of the goals was to have 8th grade algebra be, like, for some of the kids anyways, that would be, I don't know what they're doing this year, but I know last year they had some of the 8th graders took 2 math classes, which was a little bit
not ideal.
Like going up and down on the stairway at the same time, you know, but so I guess one of the goals would be to have that transition nice.
Absolutely. That's why we thought we had to start at 6th grade and work our way up to that. So
right, and then hopefully we can make this happen, and maybe a few other things like in the elementary school at some point.
Did you guys review the stuff that Nicole found?
the curriculum.
Yeah.
So,
So would we expect that committee to take a look at that curriculum since we're, as a whole,
Yeah.
supposed to be?
our meeting today, important meeting was cancelled. Couple of teachers got sick. So we could reschedule. I was fully ready to discuss with them my plan and listen their plan and come up with another plan. So please reschedule it. Without their advice, I cannot make a decision. They are the one who are in the battleground. I am not with them.
Where is that information?
Oh, I think
no, she doesn't have it in hand yet.
No, just,
Yeah.
I guess I'm
It's
just
basically-
asking that the three of you look it
Sure.
over once
Yeah.
it's pulled together, basically.
Yep.
So,
It's the same curriculum we currently have, they've just put together a scope and sequence for how to implement that more advanced track.
okay, so same
It's not any
curriculum, just.
purpose, it's nothing new,
Got
it's
it.
just a recommendation, instructional strategies.
Okay, so probably not as critical then.
I would,
It's not a look at a new curriculum.
I don't know what we would add to it beyond what that expertise has put out.
Okay.
You know, maybe just some input from teachers would be helpful.
And I understand that if the department would like that meeting rescheduled with the math teachers, I would ask Nick and Jeanette if you also feel like meeting with the teachers is important next step.
I would like to hear their input.
Okay.
I think it's important, but because it's up to Nick.
I guess, I mean, I'm a little bit interested, but I mean, like people that are opposed to it, why they are, because in my mind, I'm not a teacher, but I would think it would make their job easier.
Okay.
That's just my mentality thinking.
Got it.
Meeting is very important with the teachers, especially the mathematics and of course ELA. So first we could have a meeting with mathematics teachers. I brought all my suitcase
Ready?
to discuss with them, show them some evidence. So please reschedule it. I also requested to talk about a few things. I sent a letter to all board members.
And that's in the packet.
Yes, which I have. So you want to display it for the people?
Well, we've got it, did everyone get a chance to read that?
Yeah, thanks for putting it together.
Yeah, thank you. So in the first letter, I talk about the foundation.
So we got the letter.
Yeah, I just want to talk a few minutes.
So are there questions with the car on this?
No, I have a suggestion for it, which I did not talk about it.
Okay.
I requested here, place this information on here, then I will talk about it. My letter to you individually that says display it, these things you display it, because I did not know the law, I cannot be sending to the all board members.
So that this board has repeatedly expressed that they don't want to have stuff read to them, right? And so that's why we want to make sure it's in the packet so we can all read it ahead of time and address exceptions and questions rather than the base information.
Yeah, I did not talk about how to help.
Okay, so that's the work of the committee, right?
That's a work of committee, but something emergency took place. Ad hoc committee is still going for the bigger plan. The something emergency came up. The first and second graders, 128 are behind out of 198. Now, since our budget of last year was a $23 million and those monies have been appropriately utilized, so we are out of the money. So nothing we can do. So I have another plan. We could invite Patty Jacobson, Amy Blackdeer, TCO people, and I could go area meeting of Ho Chang and involve the community, pitch in 2 hours in the Red Creek, of course after the background check. Red Creek, pitch in and help them understand how to read. Since we run out of $23 million. So this is my plan to activate the community. Since we always talk about community, Patty Jacobson is here, therefore I'm using her name. Is it okay with you? I use your name. So that is for my suggestion I can go to the area meeting of Ho Chang Nation and my community members that please contact me, apply the job to me or to Shelly so we can have your background check, pitches in and help those who are left behind. It is not a heavy dose task to help them understand first grade mathematics. Another point was I sent 2 letters. So this is done. I'm done talking about it. Unless anybody has a question. So second thing I was talking about why we are ignoring the grades of teachers. Previous board members, including these board members, they always say IRAD test is just the one test. Therefore, May 6, 2023, I requested this board when new people were not here, that I would like to see the grades of the teachers and align with IRAD test result and DPI test result to find out what is going on.
Iftikhar, you brought that up at that committee, and the other 2 board members on that committee agreed that they would like to see the grades broken down as you had asked. And so Nicole and I had that on our list, that when grades come out at the end of the first trimester, I thought the 3 of you all said that that is how you also wanted to see it. You thought that was interesting, correct, Nick? Yes?
Yeah, rather than just a score, it's like, you know, how many kids actually got an A, B, C,
Right.
D.
So.
Yeah, I was about to talk about Nicole's report, which I have it.
And so I'm saying, I don't know that we need to take time because that already happened in committee and we said, yep, we'll do that.
You see, I am on the agenda and you folks are not allowing me to talk. I don't know what to do with you guys.
Sorry, if you'd like to talk about it more, go right ahead. I'm simply going to say the committee is
I am
already
on the
asked us.
agenda. This was issued in the public record, in the
The agenda
newspaper.
item is instructional groupings committee.
So I'm talking about grouping committee to those who are not
So,
in our
what-
ad hoc
so-
committee.
In addition to what the subcommittee has asked for, what additional information then related to grades?
Yes, I would like, this is the original result of 8th grade ELA grades. Exceptionally good. 102 students, only 10 of them totally behind, 92 rock. 92 students did good job. So our teachers are doing exceptional job. But we can only say they are doing exceptional job when we see the real deal. So this is what I'm emphasizing to those who are not in our ad hoc committee. Of course you cannot be, because we cannot create a quorum, just the 3 and a few other people. So it is important for us, for especially me, to evaluate, to see the grades of the teachers. So the board member should not have an excuse, oh, it is just the one test. I want to eliminate that concept of a one test. So therefore I would like to see one more result of the test of the teachers. And I've been asking from last year. So therefore please help me to get these things, so I can help you guys.
So,
Like Shelley
so
just said,
yeah, we'll
she's
get
gonna
it.
get them, so that's great, that's good. I
Thanks.
think we're all on board that seeing that data is gonna be beneficial for us to make decisions, so thank you, Shelley and Nicole, for taking the time to put it together. When you do that in a few months.
End of the try is the end of November.
All right, anything else on 8.2? We've already completed 8.3. Next is 9.1, monthly expenditures. As always, in the packet.
Super liquor.
Are there any questions for Jill? Looking for a motion?
Make a motion to approve the monthly expenditures.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, school forest update?
Sure, so my understanding of our last conversation was that you were interested in me reaching out to the other 3 municipalities who are also joint owners of the undivided 40 acres. Albion has asked to transfer their ownership to us. I had called the town of Adams, Mr. Dulce, and he asked for some information. I have since sent him and the city and Brockway the packet of information, and Adams would like us to take ownership of their portion as well. He asked me to have our attorney draw up a quit claim deed to make that happen, whereas Albion wants to wait until their annual meeting to make that happen. Either works for us. Again, we weren't trying to ask for ownership, we were simply making them aware of the situation. So we will be at least a 50% owner in that property, remembering that the county still has mineral rights and the regulation of hunting rights. So that is in the works right now. There are letters out to Brockway and to the city, and I will keep you updated when I hear from them, their municipalities. In addition, the gate that was there was taken down multiple times last weekend. Mr. Nortman had a great conversation, and apparently there was elk bugling, and so the gate had been lifted and moved because there were buglers, and I'm making that silly face because when he was telling me about it, I was picturing buglers. I didn't get it, and so that's my bad. Now I understand, they were listening, and so they went out Saturday and they just lifted the gate and swung it and pulled it out of the ground and swung it, and then they all went in, and then they put it back, and then Sunday, more bugling, they went and moved it, and they did not move it back. Some pictures of the gate down were shared with us. Before I knew anything about elk and bugling, I thought someone had done damage to our gate at the forest. So I asked Ken Tweinman, our facilities guy, to go out and do some checking, and he stopped and he talked to Ed Zahaski from the Parks and Forestry and Parks. And Ed is one that told him about Jim, sorry, Zahaski, I apologize. My brain's getting tired. Jim Zahaski told us about the bugling, apologized for not putting the gate back when he was done, and we said, no problem, we appreciate knowing who was there, and so the gate was down. Then another member from Parks and Forestry reached out to Dan and said, you know what, this is ridiculous that this happens. We have now done damage by pulling it out and moving it. We are going to install a new gate, and it will have a lock on it, and the district will have one key and the county will have the other key, so that if somebody wants to go in, they can either ask the county or they can ask the district. The gate, of course, can be walked around. There is no blockading of that property from entry. It just means that people can't drive in. And so I wanted you to have that update. There's a new gate installed. Us and the county will both have keys to it, and we are already going to be gifted 50% ownership of that property. As I put in the notes, what our best ask is going to be to the county board after I hear from the city and from Brockway is going to the county board and explaining where we currently are in this property and ask them if they are agreeable to us. Let's say there's going to be a field trip on May 3rd, starting like a week before. Can we post that there will be a field trip on April 3rd, therefore from here to here there's no hunting allowed, and then the day of the field trip they take that posting down and they take it with them when they leave. That's what we are going to ask of the county board. Jim Zahaski seems to think that that will be agreeable to them, that we are not regulating hunting in the long term, but that we are doing our best to make it safe when students are out there. Any questions about that?
Yes, we voted on it. Last time we voted for the gate should be there or should not be there. You remember last meeting?
I would have to look at them.
Yeah, we did that. So we voted very inappropriately. We did not visit the site. Yesterday I spent 3 hours visiting that site. I parked my car outside and I go from the corner of because of the gate I cannot go, so I can go walk through the corner, but no disabled man or a woman on the wheelchair get in. That is such a disrespect. We school do not do these things against people who are on the wheelchairs. That was number one thing I noticed. Number two, once I entered, there was a bathroom. Who authorized us to build a bathroom in a government property? These are my questions since I don't have attorney. And then I of course visited different places in the forest. So I would say that gate has to go, or there was no phone number who to contact on that beautiful say Black River Falls School District. There was no phone number, no sign, nothing. So majority people, they don't hear that one key we have, one key county has. People just go because they have right to hunt throughout year. Certain species, they cannot hunt one thing throughout the year. So we cannot stop their legal right to hunt. But the disabled people on the wheelchair cannot cross. It is extremely difficult. So I would say, please, all of you folks, go visit before voting. See with your own eyes. Now please let us know who authorized us to build a bathroom.
We have a land management plan that has been filed with the DNR, and the construction of the building and all of the other spaces out there have been approved through the DNR and that land management plan. So once again, we have not broken laws just because some individuals think we have. And there is no ADA laws that say county forests or forests need to be handicap accessible. So when we take our students out there who may have wheelchairs, we open the gate and we drive in. There is a lot of public hunting land that is accessible to wheelchairs, but we are not required to make our land accessible. It is more our responsibility if we are taking students that all of our students must have access to the same experiences and curriculum that our other students do. So according to the Parks and Forestry, we are not doing anything unlawful or concerning.
That is my biggest concern. We're not breaking the law. I am seeing a bathroom in a jungle. Who approved that? And I opened the bathroom, even the animal cannot go. It has to be maintained by some kind of a law. It was devastated inside. Outside looks pretty, but inside, oh no, it was not appealable. So,
I've got a broom if you want to borrow it, or if you want to help me clean it up. I'll let you do that.
yeah.
So recently,
So by law, don't we have to clean after every 2 or 3 years?
I can only repeat that after talking to Jim Zahaski, we are in complete compliance with everything he would ask us to be in compliance with. So I don't know rules on cleaning outdoor bathrooms. I'm not going to pretend that I do. So
Yeah, because whenever I go somewhere, I go with the public, and they were asking these questions.
okay,
Said that by law you have to clean the bathroom after at least 3 years, or 2 years, or whatever the law says. Since I am not attorney.
send me that law, and then we
No, I am not
You're
the.
talking about the septic.
I am not the attorney.
Oh.
Septic system.
Oh,
let's keep on
sorry.
It is not a septic system.
Then
That's what the law talks about.
Yeah,
You have
I
to-
am not attorney. I have no access to our school attorney. We should have access to our attorney, so we could question him or her.
Are you talking about the bathroom being dirty inside?
Yeah.
Being maintained?
No, it's not maintained.
So
But
that's
bathroom
what
is
you're
there.
talking about, not a septic system being,
But then he's suggesting that the law requires that we clean the bathroom every so often, and I am completely
yeah,
unaware
I'm
of-
just clarifying if what
Well,
he's
there's a
saying
law to
because,
pump a septic system every 3 years. but
Right.
That's why they
Well,
said
yeah,
septic, because they were trying to connect some dots.
More like
Right,
a holding tank, you know.
Can you remind us in part the ownership again real quick, just
So,
for
right,
fun?
so when you read the quick claim.
As of right now, before we take people up on their offers.
So it's, it says, equal undivided shares. So I just wanna
That's
remember that, so it's 40 acres, but it's not like this 10 is Albion, this 10 is undivided, so it's 40 jointly owned. It's the township of Albion, Adams, Brockway, and the city of Black River Falls are currently owners.
Isn't it? No, it's not that one.
It is definitely an old dump. It was previously a brush dump, which, to be honest, that's what Albion and Adams both said that's why they would like to be done with it. They were concerned about any future activity on a former dump, and so.
I do think it's worth like revisiting the idea of the gate, like being that we put the gate there, but we're not 100% owning the property. You know what I mean? So I think it's worth the discussion.
And just a reminder that the, while we're not owners, all 4 of those townships have passed a, gosh, what's the word, is it an indenture? I can't remember what it's called now. A resolution. Each one of those 4 towns have passed a resolution that grants the district the use of that property for an outdoor education / school forest. So, and that happened in 77. So all 4 of them do not utilize the property. They have it as school forest outdoor education site.
But other people still can hunt on the land as long as we're not there doing
Correct.
school things.
Correct.
Right, any other questions on that one? The saga continues. All right, we have the policy 112 that reflects the new Title IX language. This is second reading, so we are looking for approval tonight.
could we table this?
Title
I
IX.
just have some of the things that when I read through it, I was like, if I read it just sounded like a bunch of salad. I mean, it was hard to understand. So I would like us to be able to spend more time.
So first reading was last month and I received 0 questions all month. And now tonight is second reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
And was I to tell you?
For sure, if you wanted changes or something, that's the purpose of a first reading and a
No,
second reading.
Some of the wording, so if I just say there is no absolute deadline for the initial filing of a report or complaint of discrimination under this policy, the district always has an interest in being made aware. And then you can read that and then it goes back to the next one. I'm not gonna read it word for word, but I just feel like this is not a law that we have to make a rush on this right now.
But it is, the law went into effect August 1st.
It was not a mandate.
It was, anybody who receives federal funds was supposed to adopt a policy and it took effect August 1st.
We just chose that first meeting not to just approve it. We felt like we
Right.
should have the chance
So
to
we're
read
just
through the policy.
Catching up to where we need to be
Yep.
in concordance with the law, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm a fan of not discriminating against people, so it has my support.
So, we need to follow the procedures here. So you made a motion to table, is that correct? Okay, so I have a motion to table.
Yeah, table it, yes.
So a second?
Second.
Yeah, second, I second it.
Okay, so we have a motion, so just quick review of Robert's rules, right? So this is a motion to table, it takes a majority vote to table it. If we fail to table it, we'll still be looking for a vote tonight. Okay. So further discussion or questions before we vote on tabling?
Is there like a deadline when we have to?
August 1st.
Already passed it.
Gone.
I guess I'm struggling because all night we've been talking about being law abiding, and now we have made the temporary exception due to a separate law being in place that suggests 2 readings, and now you're suggesting we should forego that mandate and that law. So I guess it's confusing to me as a fellow board member as to where we're standing on that.
We're just voting on whether we're tabling it at this point.
Okay. Well, it's a discussion, right?
Yeah.
A discussion would be what?
All right.
So it's basically held over your head for federal funding, right?
I'm sorry, what?
This Title IX is basically held over your head for federal funding, so. How much is that?
About 6% of our budget,
Just quite a bit.
more with ESSER funds.
All right, so all those in favor of tabling, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I have 1 for it. All those opposed to tabling, please signify. Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Nick, I didn't catch yours.
I'm gonna agree to disagree, so no,
No, I'm sorry.
not tabling.
Not tabling, okay, thank you. And Jeanette, I didn't catch yours.
I'm not gonna vote.
Okay,
I'm gonna abstain.
abstain, okay. I have 1 for tabling, I have 5 opposed and 1 abstention. All right, so now we're looking for a motion to approve.
I'll
So
find-
go ahead, Amy.
I'll motion to approve it.
I'll second that.
So now discussing passing policy 112, approving policy 112. Any discussion on that?
Sure. I like not discriminating and I love abiding by the law. So that's my contribution.
I can definitely empathize with you that just reading through it, there is kind of cumbersome the way it's written, but I think the meat of what needs to be said there is there for us to make the decision. I don't think there's anything that we're missing in what's there, but I do agree that it does make you have to jump around a little bit within the document in order to
And I
the
thought
flow.
the policies were supposed to be easily read and understood.
Yeah, it's,
But again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't follow the law. But I do believe that you have to have policies that people understand.
yeah.
And lay people understand.
And if you read your
If they
title,
wanted to read, if if parents wanted to read this policy, it is not at that level.
They agreed, and the federal law was not written to be any easier.
All I'm saying, it is a concern. I mean, we're here to meet for our community. And it's always about dollars. And I've just about had enough of it constantly being about money.
I think this is also about not discriminating against.
And you know what? I don't discriminate against anybody. But I am saying that at some point I feel we don't look, we pick and choose what we want the community to see and understand and what we don't. And that's my concern.
Have you had a chance to do the Title IX training yet?
No.
No, okay. Once you do that Title IX training, I think you'll understand this document and this policy a lot more. I can say that just because I did once I did the training. So
Sherry also sent us a training with a code word. I read, it has a slides for reading as well as you can watch.
Yep.
So I was doing both things. These things were there.
Yep. That's exactly what Casey was just
Exactly
sharing.
what you're talking about.
Yep.
I always felt in these policies, especially this 112 policy, it has so many holes. Rule of law has only a few holes. So therefore I was looking for an attorney to talk about this thing that it is totally aligned with the rule of law. Policies made with so many holes to create problems. So I would say when it is due.
August 1st.
Oh, that was last month.
Yes.
Yeah,
So we are late.
Last month, remember, we decided not to just vote. We decided to take the time to do the first
Okay,
and
let's
second
say
reading.
if we go in the favor of this, in case we go in the favor of this, so in the future, can we bring this thing on the discussion?
The policy committee could choose to review it again.
We haven't met.
Remember, we decided that we were going with that might have been July, sorry, I say
Yeah.
remember, Neola, and so the policy committee won't be meeting throughout the year. That review starts with them, and then at the end of the year, there'll be a lot of heavy lifting.
So Neola will
review
this
this.
as well.
Yeah, so since we are late, it is not that bad, but there were a few things.
It was created by the WASB attorneys, which is who did that training that you watched. So this policy was written by the same people that did that training.
Yes, but when those attorneys were talking, we cannot talk to them.
Right.
So it was also one-sided. So I did have a few questions. Since we are already late, keep it on the record. I would say keep it. If we are late, August, right? Supposed to be in August.
Further discussion?
I feel like the law is one-sided, like there's not much, I mean, we can talk all we want, but just, the law is just the law and we have to abide by it, no matter what we feel. It's a law, a state law?
A
Federal law, wow, heavy hitter there, so I mean, if we don't wanna lose funding, so we can continue to get our numbers up and continue to see our teachers stick around and the kids flourish, besides the fact that we shouldn't wanna discriminate against anybody, I don't see why this is even a topic for discussion. We've had a month to read it 3,000 times if we like, but nothing's changed and it's not going to change.
Further discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving policy 112? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nick, speak something.
I recorded abstention?
Hold my hand.
Did you abstain or did you vote? Did you abstain or did you vote? I'm so sorry.
No.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay.
Abstain.
Did you abstain as well?
Yes.
Okay. I had 5-4, 5, yes, 5-4.
In favor.
5 in favor, 2 abstentions. Thank you. Hard words. Okay, meeting minutes. Usually we don't have 2 back-to-back meetings, but we have August 19th, which is our regular meeting, and the special meeting on the 20th was the facilities tour. there are any questions or corrections? Otherwise, looking for approval on those.
Making a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, district admin report.
I would just share that 3 quick things. One, American Education Week always sneaks up on us really quickly when we only meet once a month. And so that is November, and I'm asking, not telling. I feel like we have conversations around this table of you as a collective group saying that you would like to engage with staff. I'm wondering if this group would like to do something for staff on American Education Week. Do you want to make a breakfast for them to come into? Do you want to serve lunch? Do you want to make root beer floats at the end of the school day? You don't have to do any one of those things. I'm just throwing that out there because I feel like that comes up often, and it is in such a hurry that we don't get anything done. So if that is of interest to you, please give it some thought and let me know. 2, before you leave, I have a note here. We need a photo of the board. So please don't leave until we can get all 7 of you together and I can take a photo. And 3rd, it has been a really, really positive start to the school year after some significant technology challenges in the first weeks. It was a rough transition. We had to change our filtering system because the old one was no longer relevant and possible. It was not just because we have a new tech person. It had to be changed over, and there was a huge learning curve there because the filter starts to learn your system and what things you allow and what you don't, and so it was serious lockdown, and it was really frustrating for a lot of staff and a lot of students. They were locked out of a lot of content that they use on a regular basis. So we are hopeful that we are on the upswing of that, but as we have so many technology tools and devices, there really have been some serious setbacks. Some of our kids that take classes at WTC couldn't take their assessments. There's just 8,000 little things that you don't think of that have been really challenging. But the team of 3 is working through it, and hopefully things are better. So those were my only updates for tonight.
Thank you. And American Education Week is November 18th.
Yes.
When is it?
November 18th, week of. All right, WSB or other?
Is anyone interested in going to the regional meeting? It is October 3rd, so the night before homecoming. You are going? You are?
I will go, yeah.
Okay.
Sparta,
Yes.
It's close by.
at Herman Elementary.
Herman Elementary, their new building.
I've been there.
Do we need to register?
What time are we starting?
Marty can register you. It is, if I remember correctly, dinner at like 6:30. I'm just gonna look quick, sorry. Just because Marty will register you, and I'm happy to get a district vehicle and drive down if people are interested. 6 is registration, 6:30 is dinner, and 7 to 8:30 is the regional meeting program.
Anyone else want to go?
Also the Tiger Victory March, because it's the night before homecoming.
What date did you say in October?
Thursday, October 3rd.
So just Michaela and Tara.
I'm gonna get back to you on that, yeah.
And I'm sorry, one more reminder to the board. I scheduled tentatively an expulsion hearing with you. There is a manifestation hearing tomorrow morning that whether we need to have an expulsion hearing or not is contingent on tomorrow morning's meeting goes. I will let all of you know how that goes so you know whether that hearing is on or not.
And I won't need a band or whatever for Sparta. I'll just go there.
Okay.
What time? Is
6 o'clock is registration.
from here, when we take off from here?
Probably 5:45.
You will.
I will certainly drive. Yep.
5:45.
Yep.
Right, any other conference or workshop attendance? School board connection opportunities, again, reminder, the TCO meeting is Wednesday at the high school LMC. Anything else? Future agenda items?
I wanted to, I thought last month's meeting, when we had the public speaker come and talk about the Native American pedagogy was interesting to me, and I asked a few questions around, and it sounds like Nicole has got some information on that and how it could be potentially tied in. When I looked at the report and we look at the chronic absenteeism, you know, that's a large demographic of folks with high absenteeism, so I think like trying to find ways to want them to be at school would be great, so I'd love to see what Nicole has, if she could pull something together. If the rest of the board is interested in hearing about it. If I'm the only one, you know.
I love that idea.
So,
I love that idea.
Can we add, Nicole, I love your stuff a little bit, but can we also add, maybe a perspective from the Ho-Chunk Nation on this?
I was planning on that.
Okay, cool.
So we will, we'll look at future meetings and see when we've got some time to put that in.
yeah, when it makes sense.
Yep, because that could be a good time.
Yeah, yep.
Alright, if there are no other items, looking for adjournment,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
Everyone is adjourned as soon as they get their picture taken.
Thank you for
What
remembering.
is that for?
Well, it's a surprise. It's almost School Board Appreciation Week and they want a picture about it.